Hello, world. Tim McBride is a former marijuana smuggler and pot hauler living on the edge of Florida's Everglades. From 1979 to 1989, Tim ran the Southern Waters and the Caribbean with a band of modern-day pirates known by locals as saltwater cowboys. Night after night, Tim would offload up to 20 tons at a time from cargo ships that would make the trip from South America. Similar to how Mexico does today, Colombia supplied 42% of the marijuana consumed in the United States in 1984. The major percentage of this traffic was controlled by Tim's crews working with smaller crews and several large Colombian organizations. Tim's story is fucking crazy. Highly recommend this podcast. This is one of my all-time favorites. Without further ado, please welcome Tim McBride.
When I was preparing to do that Viceland video, I asked John, the guy I showed you, the superintendent, and we'll show you in a minute. I said, "Do you know like any of your other buddies hanging around, man, that might want to, get involved in this thing?" He goes, "Yeah." He says, "I know the two perfect guys, right?" And he says, "These guys love to talk about themselves." I said, "Yeah, that's perfect, man. That's what I'm looking for." So he says, Ron Curry and Ron Guthrie, Ron and Ron. Right. So fast forward, we're having lunch at a Panera Bread, and just then we're talking about what's coming up, what they're going to do with the, on the video and, for the doc. And this Ron Curry, he looks over at me and goes, "You don't remember me, do you?" And I said, "No, should I?" And he says, "Well, yeah, I boarded your boat one night." I said, "Really?" And dude, I've only been boarded 3 times ever, and I remember him perfectly. And I said, "You're going to have to give me a little more than that." So he starts telling me the story about I'm coming out of the Southwest on the Fort Myers Beach just after sundown, and he threw the blue lights on me and stopped me. And I said, "Oh, yeah, that's the night I let you stop me." He goes, "What do you mean you let me stop you?" And I said, "Dude, I had, 60 mile an hour on you. I could have left you hanging, but what I didn't need was you on the radio and everybody out here running around trying to chase me and find me when 25 minutes after you stopped me, I ran north to Pine Island and unloaded 47,000 pounds of shit." He goes, "No, you didn't." And he looks over at his boss, John. He goes, "Yeah, he did." So Ron goes on. We get to be friends, and he's telling me things, and I was originally sentenced with 160 years mandatory to life and $16 million in fines.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by the best bongs in the business. I don't care if you're smoking weed, tobacco, freebase for my fellow Floridians. Just kidding, of course. There are 2 types of cannabis smokers out there. Those who suffer from burning, scratchy throats, and those who use the freeze pipe. With Freeze Pipe's freezable glycerin coils, you will enjoy colder, bigger hits without the throat burning or intense coughing. We've been testing out this freeze pipe for about a week now, and I have to tell you, it's like taking a bong rip from Mr. Freeze's ice gun. The secret is these freezable glycerin chambers in here that cool the smoke by hundreds of degrees and make your rips way cooler and way smoother. The difference is truly drastic, and your lungs will thank you. Check out Freeze Pipe's entire line of unique pipes, bubblers, bongs, and dab rigs at thefreezepipe.com. and use the code Koncrete to save 10% off your first order. That's thefreezepipe.com and use the code KONCRETE. Back to the show.
Because what was taking place at that time, and history proves this, and anybody with any brains can look this up. And if you're doubting my word on this, that the federal sentencing guidelines didn't change to mandatory minimums until around September 1st, 1987. So if your crime happened before September 1st, 1987, you were considered under the old law, which gave you good time, statutory good time, and parole. Plus the judges or magistrates, if you will, had at that time discretion out the ass, let's put it that way. They could take a lot of things under consideration when they're sentencing you, like, are you a family man, or you've ever been in trouble before, and that kind of stuff. Your demeanor, and, are you cooperating, are you participating, all that kind of crap. Well, those sentences up until that time weren't having any real great effect on anything, really. And, a great example of that is I had just somehow managed to come across an article, and you can find it if you look it up. If you Google Daniels Brothers Everglades, and an old Miami Herald article will come up, front page article, and the headline reads, "The cocaine cowboys of Miami have nothing on the Daniels Brothers of Everglades City." So the story goes on, the article's reading through, and the magistrate, these 5 brothers are standing in front of the magistrate being arraigned for their crime, pot hauling. And 4 of the brothers had never been arrested, but Craig, the youngest brother, who was, my buddy, this would be his second time. So the judge goes, you can hear him rifling through this shit, and he goes, I have absolutely I absolutely don't have any knowledge on how to sentence people like you. He says, there are no guidelines for people such as you. He says, I'm at my wit's end. I have no idea. He says, and he looks over at Craig, the youngest of the 5 brothers, and he says, you do realize this is your second time around, Mr. Daniels? He says, so why don't we do this? He says, your 4 brothers, first time around, 36 months. And then he looks at Craig. And he looks at Craig and he says, Mr. Daniels, he says, no, remember, second time around, he says, does 5 years sound like a long time to you? And he's asking him. And Craig goes, oh, hell yeah, man, it sounds like a long time to me. And I got 5 years. This is after reading their list of seizures. And the list of seizures read like, Jesus, around $15 million in holdings in a Netherlands and Tilly's holding company, and a number of properties around the Caribbean. Here in the United States, they had timeshares, hotels, motels, houses, cars, boats, buses, airplanes. All kind of shit. They seized another $8 million in cash, plus they seized 580,000 pounds of Colombian weed. Now, who's got a 500,000 plus pounds of weed laying around? Well, we do. So this is what they seized from these guys, and these are the sentences that they gave them: 36 months and 5 years.
And what year was this again?
This was in 1984.
1984.
See, they came. They did 2 operations, or 3 actually, 3 operations in the 80s. The first one was in 1983 called Operation Everglades. Over 250 plus federal agents from 9 branches of law enforcement across the United States. Every end of the spectrum was there, man. They were everywhere. And it wasn't it didn't result the way they had intended it to, because the intelligence of the first generations, I'm considered a 3rd generation pot hauler. I was with the kids. The 2nd generation is those guys and their fathers and uncles and older cousins, and the generation before them was their grandpas, and so on like that, because it was generational. So these guys are, they're standing there and they're getting these sentences, and Craig gets 5 years after having had all this stuff seized, all this money and all this property and all this stuff like this. The guidelines only provided for that. The judge has no other recourse but to go by what the book told him to do at that time. So skipping forward, here comes 1984. The first time they came around, they hardly found anybody, because 2 weeks before that, they knew 2 weeks before they were coming that they were coming, because their intelligence was as such that everybody left town. Oh, they're coming, leave town. So almost a year to the day, here they come again. 250 plus, almost 300 federal agents from DEA, Customs, Secret Service, FBI, you name it, they were in there. And they shut the town down, and a little bit of Naples. It only took one guy to block off the road into the Everglades, because there's only one road in there. And it was kind of silly. That's how they blocked the road off.
Jesus.
This is a this is a major,
look at this guy with his hat and a shotgun, like
pot hauling operation, and this is their roadblock.
What are you gonna do with that shotgun?
Because
what do you think you're gonna do with that thing, man?
Fuck, dude. There's only one road in and one road out. How many guys do you need to watch the fucking road, right? And I thought so.
Plus, you guys are getting around on airboats anyways.
You know, so the second time around, I mean, it was kind of comical in most respects because there were more reporters on this 130-acre island. There were more reporters and cops on the island than there were people being arrested.
It's kind of funny they're trying to block a road when you guys get around on boats.
Dude, yeah, I mean, you know, and what's crazy too is, you know, we were masters of hide in plain sight. You know, we'll get into this in a little bit,
right,
about how it's done, the mechanics of it. You know, most people, it just blows most people's mind, and that's when I start getting into, yeah, right, dude, you know, this kind of shit. But dude, you know, I'm not sitting here, you know, and St. Martin's Press didn't verify, you know, my story or what it is I'm imparting without some kind of, you know, sources. Because the publisher of St. Martin's Press, Susan Robbins, she asked me, she says, what about validation? You know, because of all this craziness I'm writing about, you know, hundreds and even thousands of tons of pot. And I said, well, validation. Well, let me see. Who would you like me to introduce you to? The Supervisor for Customs, DEA, FDLE, which is Florida Department of Law Enforcement, Sheriff's, Naples Sheriff's Trident Task Force officer, FBI, CIA. Who do you want to talk to? I'll introduce him to you. And she said, perfect. That's all the validation I need. Write the book, right? So everything that you read in here, and people have asked me about embellishment when they, you know, when I'm talking about, you know, unloading a boat with 55 tons on it. You know, I said, well, embellishment. I said, there's no room for embellishment. To embellish on what was written would have made it, first of all, sound so ridiculous that, you know, it would be comical.
Well, that is comical. 55 tons. That is almost so ridiculous. It's uneven.
Well, yeah, and
fathomable.
This is something that, you know, I mean, this is people don't know the story, which is why I'm sitting here with you, you know, and guys like you to try to get them to understand that, you know, if you were smoking weed in the 60s, 70s, and the early 80s, dude, this is how you got it. You know, there was no growing the shit like they were growing it all over. Some guys were experimenting little bits here and there, you know, with a plant or two and like that. But, dude, if you wanted weed to smoke, you literally had to go to another country, load a fucking boat full of the shit, and bring it back. Mm-hmm. There's your weed. This is how it was done up until the early 90s. There's a reason for that, too.
What is this? Is this it? Naples man arrested for how much weed?
I'm not sure who that guy is.
Captain Tom, what's his last name? Storer of Collier County?
Yeah. This is just, that's the sheriff.
Oh, it's the sheriff.
It says Daniels.
Oh, that's Daniel. Scroll up to the top.
But this is like, after 30 years, he got caught again or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
It was saying something about that.
Yeah, see, the Daniels are a prevalent family in Everglades.
So they were the first people to get busted.
Well, they were, no, actually, the way the chain of events works is the original pot hauler his name was Lauren Toch Brown. Toch was his nickname. Mm-hmm. Toch was a legend in the Everglades.
Really?
Yeah. He was the guy who blazed the trail for pot hauling out of necessity, because these are the days when United States is expanding their borders of Everglades National Park to try to include our passageways into Everglades City and Chokoloskee Island, where we bring our catches, you know, our stone crabs and, you know, grouper and what have you. What they had tried to do at one point was create a law that says that you're not allowed to bring your catches through the national park. Well, how in the hell are you going to get to the fucking fish house if you got to go through the national park to get there?
Right.
That wasn't going to happen, so it was a big deal going on, and they tried to shut us down. Then they go into rules and regulations. You can only catch so many of a size.
The IFQs.
At a time of year, at a certain time of year.
Yeah.
Only certain types of nets are to be used on mullet and pompano and that type of thing, you know. And they just started crunching down and making life a little bit harder on everybody down there, you know. But and then this pot hauling shows up, you know, and Toch gets approached, and he's okay, well, you know, so he gets his boat together and his crew. He goes to Panama, goes around the corner and up the river to the grassland to find the red bud that everybody was, you know, smoking at that time. And trial and error. I mean, it wasn't an easy thing. I mean, he had his problems, but he finally wound up working it out. So he's bringing these loads from Colombia, South America, you know, to the guys, to the Cubans in Miami, and things are getting a bit dicey over there, you know, and he says, look, why don't we just bring this shit over here? You know, he says, look at this, 10,000 islands. We live here. This is where our kids play, you know. You get the shit in there, it's ours. So why don't we just bring it around there? So if you saw the doc on Viceland, that's exactly how it played out. Miami was the focus. Nothing going on over here in Everglades.
Cocaine, right?
The cocaine cowboys fucked everything up, man. I mean, everybody wants to be the guy, you know. And in particular, in those days, was a woman by the name of Griselda Blanco.
Oh, yeah.
She was the godmother.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if anybody knows this story, and I pretty much know it intimately, you know, without the Hollywood bullshit that goes into it, you know, when you see it on television. She and her husband actually got Pablo and his partner, Carlos Later, brought them out of the gangs in Medellin. They were selling weed on the streets in Medellin. Showed them how to gather the coca paste and create the cocaine hydrochloride. They were setting him up to use him as a conduit from Colombia to the United States. Griselda had it where she was using models and beautiful women and putting in the bras and this kind of shit. You know, that was her first gig. She was started out in New York, got busted with a kilo, disappears. 2 years later, she shows back up in Miami under her real fucking name. Hello, nobody picks up on it. Mm-hmm. These are the people protecting us. They don't even know that this woman's back, and she's using her real name in Miami. She winds up being the murderous, torturing, brutal son of a bitch that ever lived, if you know the story.
Yeah.
That's
I've seen Billy Corben's documentaries.
Billy Corben made that, yes. That's how Escobar became the murdering, infamous son of a bitch that he was. He learned it from her, because that's just how these people were. Right. She was the kind of woman where if you got her shit and you paid her back and she didn't like you, she'd kill you. Mm-hmm. If you didn't pay her back, she'd kill you. If you took her shit and whatever, you know, she killed people like she's ordering pizza. So that's where the focus began, over there on the cocaine cowboys. And what we were doing on our end of it was taking these idiots' money, their bar money, you know, just for instance, give me 300 grand. I'll take it to Colombia and I'll buy you 30,000 pounds of Colombian red bud. It's $10 a pound, you know. So by the time I get your shit back here to the United States, it's upwards around $500 a pound at that time.
Buying it for 10 in Colombia and selling it in Miami for 500.
500. So this is another fallacy that I try to disprove. You know, when people think about violence, dude, you're in Colombia or in South America. I worked with Noriega several times. Never met him. Got a handwritten note from the guy one time, but never met him. And just people like this, people in Colombia and Jamaica, you know, like that. Mm-hmm. No, I'm not scared. Oh, what the fuck? I'm a kid. I grew up in this, you know, with doing this with these guys.
How old are you?
I'm 20. First time I ever unloaded a boat full of pot, I had just turned 21. And it was 15 tons. And I never did one that small.
Jesus Christ. How long does it take? How many guys do you have unloading 15 tons?
Well, and
how long does that take?
There's 3 guys on the big boat that go out to meet the mothership. That's us. That's this is the hierarchy of how it all works. The boat that goes offshore to unload from the mothership,
right?
That crew gets paid the most. Because when you think about it, if we're taking 30,000 pounds of shit and putting it on our boat, 3 guys are responsible for the whole load for about 5 hours to get it into shore. So that's big money.
Yeah.
And while we're doing that, you know, there's always safety valves built into the scenario, no matter where you are and what you're doing. In this case, and I think I gave you this, we're using this boat.
Oh yeah, the picture of your crabbing boat, right?
That's me on that side. That's my buddy Mark. He's the first mate on this side.
Yeah. Here, pull that up, Austin. You have that, right?
You got this boat?
Yeah, we got the crab boat.
That boat has hauled millions of pounds, literally millions of pounds of pot has been on the deck of that boat. Not only the deck, we're filling it up around the bow. We're stacking it up on top here just so the radar turns. And then from that level all the way back, it's that high. This goes down to about 8 inches of water line. That's how heavy the boat gets. And we plug the scuppers in the back so the boat doesn't sink.
So how many pounds can you fit in that boat at one time?
I think we put about 45,000 pounds on there at any one time. And this is not hiding it below deck, all this subterfuge bullshit. This shit's, I mean, if you were to fly over this thing when it's loaded, all you'd see was the radar turning and a big ball of pot going through the water, and that's what it looks like.
What happened? You can't find the boat?
That's the only one that won't open.
Oh fuck, that sucks.
And then the reason why, you see, it was our job as the guys on the boat to sample the shit. You know, so when we get back to the shore, we're like, yeah, take some of this shit, man, it's good, you know, like that, and then everybody would have a stash of it, right? So it was never a problem. Load the boat, kick back. Captain's doing his job. He's watching the radar. You know, we got a 15-mile radius. Anything comes within that, we keep an eye on it. And if it looks like that target's coming toward us, we get off onto that. That's running.
That's the speedboat.
That's my chase boat. It's running right next to that load. You got a picture of that one up there?
Yeah, we have that picture too. Hopefully you can pull that one up.
That's me driving the boat and a buddy of mine just out for a cruise. This boat drives...
Like a Scarab or something, like a go-fast boat.
Chris Craft.
Okay, okay.
Nearly 600 horsepower. And it's a deep V offshore, I mean, go fast, 60 mile an hour before your ass hits the seat.
So those guys are following you. They're behind you.
I've got this boat. If it's not my boat, that one right there, it's somebody else's boat that we've hired to run alongside of us. We've got this giant fucking ball of weed going through the water that's maybe doing 4 knots.
Right.
Because it's, I mean, it's loaded.
You're chugging.
And if something on the radar looks like it's coming at us, you know, what the hell are you going to do?
Right.
Well, you jump on that son of a bitch and you go.
You get the fuck out of there. You leave the weed.
Let them have it. Because the guys running the boat don't own it. The captains, the owners of the vessels are never on them. The guys that own the vehicles and the trucks and all that stuff for transportation, the owners are never involved. There's always somebody else, and there's a reason for that as well. If somebody were to, if we were to jump off and get onto that chase boat and you know, off into the night, they're never going to find us. We are on the radio the minute we see we're getting boarded to the guy that owns the boat, our captain. Call it in. He calls the cops, the local sheriff department, and says, dude, I just looked out and noticed that my boat's gone. So he reports it stolen. So, and the vehicles are the same way. If vehicles get stopped, these guys get out and haul ass because let me back up a minute here so it can all make sense for you. We unload the freighter. We bring that 30,000 pounds in. 20, 25 other little smaller boats, T-crafts or mullet boats at that time. A T-craft, this is it without its twin 235s.
Okay.
Really wide, really shallow bottom.
Right.
I don't know if you can see. With twin 235 Evinrudes hanging on the back of it with vertical and horizontal trim. Right. So as long as that prop will go through the water, that boat will go through the water. So we're running these, we're unloading our big boats onto this. 25 of these, they're running them through the shallows, through the backwaters to the island where we literally taken the furniture out of one of our buddies' houses. And we start stacking and filling this house full. And if there's more to be had, then we just move to Tommy's house next door and start filling his house. This all takes place between sundown and sunup. By the time the sun comes up, the entire load, regardless of how big it is in somebody's house and waiting to be taken to Miami. If, by chance, and this happened...
The entire load meaning how many? How much?
40 tons.
30
tons.
How many trips do you have to go back? How many times do you have to go back and forth if the boat can only hold 30,000 pounds?
Well, then we take 3 boats.
That's fucking nuts, man.
We take 3 of those big boats. Like my big boat.
Right.
We anticipate the size of the load, or they tell us what's coming.
Okay.
You know, there's 60,000 pounds. We can't get 60,000 pounds on one boat.
Right.
So you take another boat, or you take 3 boats and make the loads a little bit lighter, move a little bit faster, it all gets done quicker. Everybody makes the same amount of money because they're just, I mean, the math tells you how much money there is. It's ridiculous. So in this case, it's just 1 boat took the whole load. We brought it in. They come out like flies on a garbage can, these little boats, and they take as many trips back and forth to the house till our boat's empty and the house is full. Close it up and lock it up. Now, if the vehicles, the vans, the cars, the trucks, you know, whatever it may be that is transporting the material to Miami, some of them get loaded that night while it's coming off the boat, and then you drive it into town and park it in the driveway and leave it there. You know, just park it in the driveway. Everybody has a 2-meter radio. We got like 110 of these things because to do one of these jobs, say even just a 30,000 pound, which I never did one that small before ever. After that, they were always bigger than that. Takes about 50 to 60 people, sometimes more, to make one job work. That's why when the article comes out in Life magazine, we'll get to that, and it talks about a town of mostly women and children because the entire male population's gone to fucking prison. You know, that's because you can't keep using the same guys night after night after night, dude. You're gonna bust their asses because I stone crab during the day, and I'm pulling 350 stone crab traps.
Which will that's a job that'll fucking break you.
Oh, dude, it'll make a man out of you.
Oh yeah.
Because these traps are...
I know a lot of guys that live right down the street here that stone crab all day, every day during stone crab season.
We had 7,000 traps. We pulled 700 a day. I pull 350. The guy on the other side of the boat, we have twin pullers, back and forth.
Yeah.
While he's pulling his, I'm dropping mine. While I'm clearing my trap, he's picking one up. I empty mine, I drop one in his place. And we were picking up, dropping off, picking up, dropping off all day long like this. And that's bust-ass fucking work. These things are like anywhere from 50 to 60 pounds a piece, these traps are. And if they're not catching, then the captain says, pick them up, boys. We pick every fucking one of them up and stack them, move them somewhere else, drop them out, just like they do on Deadliest Catch. You've seen this. Yep. And the way it's done is not that much different than the way they do it. Of course, their operation is... far worse than what we've got to go.
Oh yeah,
through,
those
man.
guys.
I'm not even going to make that
Alaska.
comparison. They're fucking out of their mind.
Yeah, stone crabs in the Gulf is nowhere near king crabs in Alaska.
Where we can pull 350 a day, it may take them a week to pull 350 traps. So it's a whole different ball game. But the way it's done is very similar in the way they have that big round thing spinning. They put the rope through it. It's and then it goes into a coiler. Now they're running 800-900 feet of rope. And that thing spinning is called a shiv. And the way it works is, it's like 2 pie pans stuck together like that. And you put the rope in between them, and it cinches it, and it starts to pull it. It'll grab it, and it'll start pulling on that rope. But halfway through it, it's a little thing sticking out down here called a knife. The rope comes around, but it's not actually a knife, really. It's just what it's called. It kicks the rope back out, so it doesn't continue to spin and wrap around that big thing that's spinning. Falls out on their feet. They put it in a coiler. Ours just coil on the deck of the boat because we're at the most 60 feet, something like that. So in that way, it's very similar. But, dude, we're busting our ass all day pulling traps, and then we go out and we move, say 20 tons, 40,000 pounds. That's average about anywhere between 800, 900 pieces we're moving. We're handling 900 bales a night, sometimes 2, sometimes 3 times a night. So,
if you're making that much, I mean, you're going to make a ton of money.
My first time out, see these guys. When I came down to Florida, I came right down. I had a gig in Hollywood. I was working with Sammy Davis Jr. for a few years, but that's a whole other deal there. We'll talk about that some other time. But I wound up coming back, and a buddy of mine come back home. I grew up in North Carolina. My father was 82nd Airborne. Went to school, went through my high school years in Wisconsin, of all freaking places, freezing my nuts off. And so I do this gig out in California, come back to Wisconsin. A buddy of mine that lived next door to me calls me up and says, dude, I'm moving to Florida tomorrow. He says, my brother-in-law is running a fish house on Chokoloskee Island, this little island I had been to years before for vacation, just visiting. He says, I'm going down to work on a crab boat. I said, want to go? And I was a machine, I had taken back up a machinist job at that time, and I didn't even give it a second thought. I said, shit, yeah, man, I'm in. So just like that, I packed all my crap, and I was gone the next day. We drove all the way down and got to the end of 29, and the dead end 29, dead ends right on Chokoloskee Island.
Wow.
And that's where I started. And
how did you get first introduced to hauling pot?
Well, the thing of it is when you just show up like that, people are, it's such a small town that people are sideways glancing you.
Yeah.
Who's this guy? Who's this guy? They're always eyeballing you in that way. But because of the people that I moved down there for, my friend Mark, his sister and brother-in-law ran Ernest Hamilton stone crabs on Chokoloskee Island. So they were part of the family there. Everybody knew them. So Mark was, his sister was there, and I came down with him, so everybody knew where we came from. So it was cool. We weren't cops. We weren't infiltrating. We weren't, and all that kind of stuff. So, it kind of got around to, oh, it's all cool. Well, Mark gets a job on this crab boat, and the other guy on the stern with him, there's only 3 guys on the boat. The other guy on the stern with him is from Michigan, and the captain, Billy, he's really not digging this guy, because there's, so they decided, I said, dude, I'm helping build a house for Mark's brother-in-law, at the time, just to kill some time, make a little bit of money. And he says, look, we're going to get rid of this guy. We want a job on the boat. I said, yeah, fuck yeah. So they worked this guy to death. I mean, and you can do that too, dude. Yeah. I mean, it's bust-ass work. I mean, we can tear a motherfucker up.
Fishermen don't fuck around, man. Those are some of the hardest working dudes ever.
Fuck, dude. my back is shot because of this shit now. Yeah. But he quits, and they bring me on. Well, they give me I already knew the rundown. You get up early, 3 or so in the morning. It takes you 2-3 hours to get to the traps, near the lines, and the traps are set in lines. We have buoys that are about the size, a little bit smaller than a soccer ball, a styrofoam buoy, and with a number on it. And we use what we call catch poles. We have like a 1x1 piece of lath that's maybe 6 feet long. We fiberglass a shark hook on the end of it and grind the barb off of it so we can grab that line, pull it in. Whereas the deadliest catch guys, they throw the grappling hook out there between 2 bags that are floating, and there's a line between those 2 bags. They catch that line and pull it in because, I mean, they got a mammy fucking 1,000-pound trap to pull in. Ours are only 70. So we grab that buoy, and as fast as I can, put it through the block, around the shiv that's already turning, and the trap's coming up like that. So, we start doing this by day, and I go out there, and, they explained it all to me, so we're headed out that first day, and I just happened to wake up. The bunks is in the wheelhouse, and I happen to wake up and look out like this, and the sun's up. And I'm thinking, nah, we should have been started by now. I mean, the sun's up. I look over, and Captain Billy, he's got a big grin on his face. He's looking over at me and goes, he says, Timmy, he says, we're not going to go pull traps today. He says, buddy, we're going to go offshore and unload a pop boat from Colombia tonight. And I said, cool. They kind of shanghaied me into it, man, knowing me, they knew I'd be cool about it, so it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek sort of a thing. I said, all right, cool, let's go, man. So that was at 15 tons that night. So we did that, and the very next day we get on the boat, we get ready, we'll go out, and, we're going to go pull traps again, and here we go again. I wake up, no pulling's going on. He says, okay, tonight it's 20 tons. Tonight it's 22 tons. I said, okay. 2 nights in a row. Nearly 80,000 pounds of, 80 tons of fucking weed. But I got paid rookie pay at that time. It was only $5,000 per load, per night. That was rookie pay. But now that captain understood he's got a crew that's ready to bust ass and willing to work. Now my pay changes. It goes according to the size of the load we're hauling in. So if the load's 50,000 pounds, or 75,000 pounds, I'm getting paid $75,000 a night. And there were times when we were working, 2-3 times a week, nights a week, sometimes 4 nights a week. And we're not the only boat. There's other boats out. You go to this one. You go to this one. I mean, they were stacked out there like a fucking parking lot, man. Ridiculous. If, in one instance, we go out to unload this boat. It's supposed to be 60,000 pounds of shit on this thing, and it was a freighter. You know, it was like 460-foot freighter or some shit like that.
Fuck.
So there were 3 boats, you know, assigned to do the, you know, offload to meet the mothership. So we go offshore, we get together, and we're diving, we're swimming, we're fucking off all day long, you know, having a great old time, getting stoned and shit. And at about 4 in the afternoon or so like this, just out of nowhere, this little Cessna single engine comes roaring across over the top of the boat, and you can't hear a fucking airplane coming when he's down on the water. You don't hear it until it's right on top of you, know. So here comes this plane, and it comes up, and it just misses our lower end antenna. You know, that's how close this fucking guy was. It turns out to be Daryl. He's the guy that's doing the job. This is his job. Oh. He's one of the 5 brothers that were working us all. Okay. So he buzzes us like that, and he goes up like this, and he turns, and he comes back, and he throws a milk carton out of the fucking plane. So we ease on over there, and we fucking, you know, open it up, and there's a note in it. And it says, one of you guys got to flip a coin. I don't give a shit. One of you guys got to go unload this boat over here. He says, because there was shit being unloaded all over the place.
What the fuck?
So we were going to go with the original load. So it was up to the other 2. So they flipped and whatever. So it was, he goes, that boat takes off to go unload that boat. We're waiting to unload our 60,000. So the way it works is the horizon on the water when you're out there, if you're familiar with this at all, being from Florida, your horizon is typically 8 miles before the curve of the earth puts it out of your sight. Depending on how big the vessel is above the water line, that can stretch to 8, 9, 9.5 miles sometimes at the most. So you're out of sight. You're over the curve of the earth, out of sight.
At 8 miles? At
8 miles.
Okay.
So we sit off the horizon till, you know, about 8, 9 o'clock, somewhere like that, about 2-3 hours before sunset. Call signs. All these boats have different call signs that are given to us prior to us going out on the job. So this one's Felipe, Zorro. Felipe, Zorro. He says it twice. The captain says it twice. Then he hears it back. Felipe, Zorro, come on. So they know it's us coming. So nobody else coming to that boat, they're not going to be shocked and surprised. So here we go. We pull up to this fucking freighter and this goddamn thing. It's the deck's 16 feet at least above my head. And, you know, we pull up there and there's nowhere to tie off. So Billy, the captain, the 2 captains have to keep the boats up against the side of the ship. Because there was probably, God, I don't know, there must have been 80 guys on this boat, man. And they were going down one hatch, single file, going down one hatch, coming out another hatch on the other side, carrying a bale on their shoulder, one right after the other, whew, throwing them off the edge, down to our boat down below.
Landing on the deck?
16 feet down. Bam! These fuckers are smashing the deck. And, you know, we're trying our damnedest to not get hit.
Right.
Moving them out of the way, and all of a sudden we hear
you up one of those land on your head.
We're here. Oh, dude, it'd kill you. I mean, this is 70 pounds of compressed fucking weed, dude. And the deck starts crunching. Crunch. The fiberglass, because these fuckers are hitting like bricks. Crunch. And we're thinking, oh, God, there goes our deck. But because we couldn't keep up with the 80 whatever guys throwing this shit. They're not throwing it on us. They're throwing it on the other boat too. You know, they're loading us both at the same time. Right. Well, the bales start to stack up and they start hitting one another. So that solved the crunching of the deck problem. Now all we had to do was, you know, organize it, dragging them and putting them anywhere we could put them before, you know, fill the hole up, put the deck lids on, fill the deck, you know, around the wheelhouse, on the bow, on top of the boat, wherever we could stick this shit. So we figured, you know, Captain Billy, he's in the wheelhouse, and he's kind of doing, we're all kind of doing a rough count. We figured 400 pieces, roughly, thereabouts, would be half the load. They would have the other half. So we're getting to where we're thinking we got about 400, and I'm looking up at the captain, he's leaning against the railing, peeling an orange. And you know, this all fucking shit's going on, right? And I look up and I go, how many more? And he says to me in this half-assed English, he goes, 50 more. I'm like, okay, so we're counting 50, 60. Jesus Christ. How many fucking more? And he goes, 50 more. I think that's the only number the guy knew because he doesn't know English, right? He's just yelling, 50 more, right? So they keep throwing these goddamn things. So now we're at the point where, you know what scuppers are on a boat?
No, what's a scupper?
Scupper holes are where, you know, when you're working, you're bringing water and rain and splash on the deck, the water runs out and out the back of the boat.
Yep.
Those are the scuppers. Well, now we're so loaded, the scuppers are starting to go underwater.
Oh, shit.
And that's going to sink the fucking boat because, I mean, once you get water on the deck, it's in the engine hatch, it's in the fucking bilge, it's all over the fucking place. So we take a knife and we cut open a couple of life vests, pull the wadding out of them and stuff the scuppers and plug them so the boat won't sink. While we're doing this, this shit's still coming. And Billy says, he's yelling. I mean, we've got this shit stacked up to where we can't even see inside the wheelhouse hardly because it's, you know, we just left a little space for the door to open up. And Billy says, we're getting the fuck out of here, man. He starts the boat up. Big black smoke, you know, and shit bellowing out the back end. And we start going. These fuckers are still throwing bales off. I mean, for as far as we could see these guys up into the horizon and with binoculars, they're still throwing bales off.
Are you worried about going? You're still 8 miles offshore, right?
Dude, no. 8 miles is the horizon.
Right.
We're probably 30 miles.
You're 30 miles.
We're out in the...
Are you guys not concerned about running out of fuel with that much shit on the boat?
No, we're all prepared for that. You know, that's why the chase boat, because when you're coming back loaded like that, dude, you're going to be 4, 5, 6 hours getting back home.
Oh, yeah, easy.
So we always usually used to start a big load like that. We'll start loading before sunset, you know. And then once sunset gets going on, now we have all this time to get into shore and then get it into the house. So we know, you know, the biggest thing is trying to get the mothership to come as close as we can get them to get to the shoreline. You know, the closer the better, obviously. And some of these guys, they want to stay in international waters. They want to stay out in the... there's a dividing line between the shrimpers out here and the stone crabbers. Shrimpers stay offshore so many miles offshore, and the stone crabbers have so many miles inshore for their traps to lay, because a shrimp boat will take your whole fucking line, man. I mean, they can screw up a trap line and nothing flat. So we had our boundary, you know, and we respected that. So the boats would come in to where the shrimp boats are and hide amongst them. So they're just a blip on the radar like 70 other shrimp boats out there. So we got to run out there to them and unload the shit, you know, like that. So we're, you know, and then we have this long truck back in. That's why the chase boat, that's why the radar and all this kind of stuff, you know. So it's, you know, it's, you know, the way I wrote the story, it's a bit jovial, you know, but in reality, there's a lot of seriousness to it. You know, I mean, we were kids working for the adults. We were the humpers. We were the machine. We were doing the work, and the adults are going, hey, here, go there, go there. They're not handling this shit. We are. So you bring it in. We're met by the little boats. Little boats take it, put it in the houses, and like I said, what doesn't go to the houses goes to, you know, park in front of somebody's driveway. 2-meter radios that have 5 different digits to use as a combination. Virtually unscannable at that time. And we have communication is key. Everybody has to be in communication with everybody else. We've got like 120 of these radios just hanging around, so we got one. So the next day, when it's time to start sending this shit to Miami, in broad daylight, as soon as the sun comes up the next day, that's when the shit goes to Miami.
And vans and shit across Alligator Alley.
Cars, trucks, dump trucks. We'd have a guy bring in and dump a load of gravel in somebody's driveway, fill it full of fucking weed, and send it out of town. That's a 120-mile trip across Florida, you know. So these drivers don't own the boat, don't own the cars, they don't own the vans and this shit like that. So there are also at that time, you know, at that stage of the game, another safety valve designed into the workings is we have anywhere between 6 and 8 or 10 spotters driving that route back and forth to Miami in staggered form, back and forth.
Like so all day?
All day. As long as we're moving this shit to Miami. Then what happens is we take it to a designated spot in somewhere in you know, West Miami, like Coral Gables or Kendall or someplace like that. You're typically a plaza in Kendall. And then just a little strip mall or some kind like that. And our guys will drive in, park, get out, go window shop, and I have one of our guys with the Cubans on the other end who own the shit pointing, that's our car, that's our truck. They put a guy in it, they go unload it and bring it back. This is a dead drop. This is when the term dead drop first was coined back in those days. So that had the major effect that had was that the guys that were taking the weed from us in Miami didn't know where the shit was coming from in Everglades. And our guys in Everglades didn't know where the shit was going in Miami because that guy took it and unloaded it. So if either one of them got popped, nobody could tell them where the shit came from. Right. You know? Plus, if the guy's driving, say, from Everglades to Miami and he gets pulled over, we got pickup trucks and cars. They all have reese hitches, trailer hitches. Some of them have the low slung, you know, like big tall trucks need the low slung like this. Well, we get those, pull them out, turn them over. So they go out and up with the little ball on top of it up here. Right. And if you get stopped, pulled over, whatever like this, first thing you do is get on the radio and say, hey, I'm busted. You wait for whoever stopped you to get between your vehicle and theirs, throw your fucking thing in reverse and mash the shit out of that car. You've got a ton of fucking weed or 2 tons of weed in this van, truck, or whatever it is, and you smash this fucker with that thing that's going right through his radiator. He ain't going nowhere. But you're not going to outrun his radio. You can get in that thing and haul ass and get out of sight of him, and one of those 10 spotters will pick you up because they're already there. Right. You get in the car and go home, and the call's already been made to the guy that owns the vehicle. So he's immediate. He says, dude, I just looked out my driveway. My car's gone. My truck's gone. Somebody stole my shit. Well, that immediately relieves him, the vehicle, the boat, whoever. It relieves them of any responsibility of what that thing has been through because it was stolen from them. And they get it back. Wow.
What a very thorough operation you guys had going, man.
Yeah, I mean, this is 30 years of shit going on here. You know, these guys had it figured out.
Now, going back to the cocaine cowboy story, it seems like, just from the conversations that I've had and throughout history, is by and large, most of the pot haulers converted to coke haulers because there's more money in coke, right? There's more profit.
Easier to move.
Easier to move.
Bulk-wise.
Why didn't you convert?
None of us wanted to have anything to do with that simply because of the, first of all, the people involved in it, for one thing. We're just maniacs. There's no trust, there's no nothing, there's no family to it, there's nothing oriented in that way whatsoever. Plus, the amount of time you get for being caught with cocaine was significant.
Was it?
Oh, yeah.
It was way more.
Way more significant than getting caught with a boatload of fucking weed. Plus, mostly it was the gang, the environment, the type of people that were working with that. I had an opportunity several times to move coke. It would have been so easy to do. But I didn't do it for those 2 reasons, and I did it for a third. I didn't for a third reason. The most important one, in my opinion, is now, the way this works is if you bring a load of pot in and it gets to Miami, you don't get, okay, here's your money. You don't get paid those millions of dollars right away. That shit has to start selling. You get paid out of the shit that's sold out of that load. So it may be a week and a week and a half before I start seeing money. So that being said, our guarantee for the payment is if I do just arbitrarily 30,000 pounds of shit for you, okay, and you owe me $5 million for having done the job. That's what typically it costs to do that. Okay. You paid $300,000 for this load. You're making $9,700,000 profit on something that only took me 8 days to get to you. So I'll give you all your fucking shit except for $5 million of it that you owe me. That goes to Fort Myers. You lose your shit in Miami for whatever fucking reason, I'm getting paid. I'm going to sell that shit because I got a buyer right now ready to take it. My crew didn't risk our lives to move this shit into the country and not get paid. So now when it comes to the cocaine, dude, I'm not keeping $10 million worth of your cocaine in lieu of payment. You know, fuck that shit, dude. Just do it all, have it all, and then risk getting paid or not getting paid. So it really wasn't worth it, man. I mean, we were set up and geared up for pot hauling, you know, simply because in the area in which we lived, you know, there are times when we start to bring a load in and there's unusual traffic on the island, and that's when it's immediately determined that, okay, the load has to wait, and we'll put it out in the woods. Now, in the early days, the guys would build what they call $1 million pad. They would take the bales. They would find the driest spot out there on one of the islands. I mean, I'm talking about literally 10,000 islands you can pick and choose, and which we knew them really well because that's where we fucked around. Find relatively highest spot on the ground on the island that you can, lay down, you know, a bunch of bales, and then pyramid stack them on top of those. If the tide comes up and it happens to ruin the ones that it's sitting on, there's $1 million. That's the pad. That's the $1 million pad. We take all the bales that are dry, leave the shit in the woods. However many bales that took. So that's all figured into the gig.
That's funny.
So as the kids took over, as those guys wound up going through their, you know, the process of being arrested and all that kind of crap and shit, and left us kids over. Now, we didn't believe in $1 million pads. You know, that's a lot of cash.
Wasteful.
It's a lot of pot. It's wasteful. What we wound up doing was a little bit more work, but there's a little bit more ingenuity involved in it. And we had to do this one night because there was too much traffic on the island. We brought, I think it was around 42,000 pounds, just over 21 tons, I think it was. And we had to stack it in the woods. So what we did was we found a spot about 3 miles south of Everglades up into the islands, and broke down dead trees and dead branches and built pads. Literally built 6 different pads to set this stuff on, and bucket brigaded them from the boats into the woods and built these pads and put the shit on to keep it dry. And I paid a guy $15,000 to spend the night with it. So he had a radio. Spend the night with it, so nobody could show up and come back and, you know, help themselves to it.
That's one of the most fascinating things about this whole time, this whole like era in history, right? There's like this 10 to 15 year period in South Florida, where there's so many opportunities to make so much fucking money, whether it be weed or coke, and it's insane the amount of people that I've been able to meet that have made people that they were just lucky enough to be born at that time in that area of the world, and they made so much ungodly amount of money. And
you're right about, you know, one thing is that it's pretty much being at the right place at the right time. It's not something that you just sign up for. You drive here and you sign up for it, kind of thing. You got to kind of be, you know, grew up with it, and that's what happened to me, and on all us kids. We all grew up with it. Dude, you know, when I started taking upon myself to do loads on my own, when the first and second generations wound up going to prison, I can tell you that I can lead up into that story. Well, it wasn't. It was then when we started amping up the way it was done. Up until the second and the third generations wound up going to prison, it was well boats. It was, you know, it was radios. It was. Mechanics fixing your boats, you know, and a lot of visible stuff, you know, that really didn't need to be that way. But it worked, because at that time people weren't looking for this. They particularly weren't looking for it on the scale in which we were working. I mean, it was just outrageous. I mean, I find it hard to even say sometimes because it sounds so ridiculously stupid. I mean, I did a calculation one time, and I actually did it in my book, where our crew worked 28 nights in a row. Some of the guys would say it was more than that, but I left it at 28 nights in a row. And this is 20 tons, 25 tons. 30 tons every single night. I mean, there was shit going and coming in cars and this is why half the town was involved in it.
Right.
So we're just, you know, going crazy, you know, crazy stupid. And then when this first and second generations had their go, had their run. Operation Everglades 1, which was kind of a bit of a failure. Operation Everglades 2 almost came a year to the day. This time, all the grown-ups and the adults and everybody, you know, that was visible at that time just sat around on the porches at 2, 3 in the morning waiting for the show to start because, you know, it was coming. There was nothing they were going to do about it. So Operation Everglades 2 came, and it was a bit of a success, I guess you could call it that. But what they weren't expecting was the magnitude at which this was all taking place, the sheer volume of stuff that was being moved. They had no idea. So when they took those guys all to prison, you know, here, you know, us kids are left. We were the infrastructure. We were the ones doing all the work. The adults are pointing, doing this, go here, go there, you know, pick this shit up, move. Sometimes we'd have to take stuff out of one house, move it up the river and stash it to where you can load it out and get it out that night because we have put more in that house. And, you know, I mean, it was just that way.
Right.
So 28 nights, some thought it was more than that, but I did a rough calculation to the tune of about 1.6 million pounds in 28 nights. Went through that little bitty 129-acre island to Miami. And during the day, because there's only one way in there and one way out, you know. So when the Everglades Seafood Festival came around every year, boy, that was that was a winner, man, because, I mean, there were so many cars, and there's 30, the town goes from 500 people to 30, 40,000 people, man. This shit, I mean, it's time.
Right.
Let's go. Let's move the shit. And there's vans and truckloads of this shit going through town, waving at people like this shit. Waving at the cops even, you know. 99 times out of 100, we're waving at the cops as we drive right on by them because that's the only way to get out of there. And I had a funny thing, and I'll just jump ahead real quick. I have to say this. When I was being interviewed by 2 Secret Service agents when I got arrested, I said, you know, first question out of my mouth to them was, "Do you know the geography of Everglades City?" Yeah. And I said, "Well, how many roads in there and how many roads are out of there?" And there's one. "Yeah, there's one." And I said, "Well, how many direct routes from Everglades City to Miami are there?" "Well, there's one." "Well, yeah, there's one." And I said, "Well, now how do you think all those millions of fucking pounds got to Miami? It didn't go by pelicans and porpoises, for Christ's sake. It went down that one goddamn road, the only goddamn road that there was. And 9 times out of 10, we're waving at you as we're going by, you know?" Shit. It was just that ludicrous. I mean,
that's hilarious.
And, you know, this is a thing that people have a hard time wrapping their mind around.
Yeah.
You know, because, I mean, I'm skipping around a lot, you know, but I mean, some things just need to be said in order to, you know, to complete that bit of a story and make it, you know, somewhat believable.
Right.
You know.
Did you ever have the thought of, like, you know, man, I should just hedge right now.
Quit
Quit while I'm ahead. I don't want to go to prison. I got millions and millions of dollars in these safes.
Man, you know how many times I've been asked that question. But, you know, honestly, it never occurred to me to quit, you know, because first of all,
I mean, clearly you weren't doing it for the. You had enough money to last for the rest of your life.
Dude, the money after a while was a pain in the dick.
Right.
I mean, it was more about getting away with it, you know, than it was, you know, getting paid. Because, Christ, there was this period of time when I'm getting paid. You know, I'm getting bags of money shoved across the kitchen table at me for jobs I don't even remember doing. You know, this job happened like 4 weeks ago. You know, oh, here's another one. This one was that one. This one was that one. And then I got like a stack of bags of money that I don't remember doing.
So what was the motivation then? Like, what was the best part about it?
The thrill.
Just the thrill of it.
Just
not getting caught.
The camaraderie of it, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all kids, man.
Right.
And we're running the fucking show.
Yeah, you're in your early 20s. You're not even fully fucking. Your brain's not fully developed.
Just
as they
babies.
Say. Right.
I'm sitting here 63 years old, and I'm thinking, wow, 20 years old, and I'm thinking, you know, when I think about some of the shit that I did, my ass goes. You could cut a cigar with that fucker, man.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But this is just how we grew up. This is all we knew as kids. We only knew multi-ton fucking loads. We, you know, I dumped more shit out of my fishing boots than any 3 guys can smoke probably in their lifetime. I mean, that's just how stupid it was. And I say that because, let me give you a little bit of a history here from beginning. In the beginning, when we first started hauling bales off of these boats, they were just, I mean, coming apart. They weren't even packed. They weren't compressed. The compressed bales hadn't come along yet. This is in the late 70s, early 80s.
Just loose bags?
I mean, dude, they were like taking the shit in heavy mill plastic, stuffing it with their foot, seemed like, and then duct tape that shut, stick it in a burlap bag, and then stitch that shut, throw it in a pile. They were irregular. They were elongated. They were small. They were big. They were 30 pounds. 110 pounds one of these fucking things was. It was like a big torpedo. There was no rhyme nor reason to it. It was just pack it and get it the shit out of here kind of thing. Well, when we take this shit off the mothership, you know, we're responsible for that fucking load. You know, that's our deal. That's why we get paid the big bucks. I've been paid as much as $125,000 a night just to bring a load in. And I'm only working 7 hours, you know. But the thing of it is once that shit comes ashore and it gets off our boat, we've got to clean that fucking boat, man. And we're taking hours with knives and screwdrivers and little cracks and shit because this shit and Colombian weed in those days was seedy. I mean, there was seeds pouring out of this shit. And we're unloading boats where we have to sometimes get down inside the boat and help the crew because these freighters, like the hole's way up the fuck up here. Yeah, you got to build a pyramid of bales to stand on to get the shit up, and it's falling apart. And it looks like, you know, you look like a goddamn McDonald's Happy Meal with your Mac. Fucking C's on your face and shit. You know, it's just comical. So, you know, this goes on, and we finally got to the point where, you know, we take a roll of visqueen, a roll of plastic, and some duct tape, and on our way out, you know, sun's going down, we radio our call sign, we're headed to the boat, put this visqueen out and duct tape it all down and make a big bowl out of the back of the boat.
There you go, yeah.
You know, so when they throw this shit in there, you know, we get back home, we can unload the shit, go offshore, pull all this plastic into a ball, tie a chain and an anchor to it, and throw it off the boat.
So smart, man. Like painters when they put a drop cloth down.
Fucking right. You know, because, you know, if anything becomes suspicious during the evening, and they're out there running around looking at boats and they're boarding boats, if they find a seed on your boat, you're fucked. Wow. They'll take your boat. It's as simple as that. So we get together and we're thinking, okay, this is the early 80s when the advent of the commercial and the household trash compactors first started coming on the commercials and into the scene. So a couple of the third and first and second generations get this light bulb goes on and they say, well, why don't we take about a dozen of these fucking things and a few generators down there and show them how to do this, you know? That's how a bale of pot looks like a bale of pot now. Really? Because of our guys went down to Colombia and said, we can't be responsible for your bullshit anymore. Right. You either get your shit.
It's not their problem. It's your problem.
It's us.
Right.
Because it's our asses. It's on our boat. They're not going to prison for this fucking shit.
That's how the advent of the square grouper came about.
When you look at a bale of pot today, it looks that way because our older generation made them look that way.
That's insane, man.
And that's the God's gospel truth, man. You can hate on me all you want, but that's, you know, I'm not sitting here telling lies because I like to. That's just the way it was because we were responsible. So, having said that, now they're more consistent. They're easier to handle. They stack better. So now what happens? The loads get bigger because they're not these god-awful fucking pieces of shit anymore, you know? So now they're stackable. And our boats designed to haul crab traps are perfectly designed to haul bales of pot. So they're stacking in there really nice, man. And now we got some, and we were stacking them in there to a point where sometimes the boat would That's what they look like right there, yeah. Sometimes the boat was, you know, you're pitching and rolling on the
like Legos.
Yeah, they're pitching and rolling on the seas a little bit, and some will fall off and shit like that. Hence, square grouper. That's how they get the name, square grouper. Nobody really knows today who first came up with it, but I know it came out of Everglades City because I mean, where the fuck else would it come out of? Right. And I don't, you know, I don't go on telling these stories like we are the only ones that ever did it. We didn't invent hauling pot. We weren't the only ones that ever hauled a bale of pot. I never said that. And I would never take anything away from anybody that has ever done it, because man, it takes balls.
Yeah.
You know, go to another country, to people you don't know, load your boat, bring it back, you know, and get away with it. They were pot haulers all over the place. What my story is designed to do is to help you understand the history of it all, and how a small town in Southwest Florida can be the hub of the marijuana industry throughout North America, and nobody know a fucking thing about it.
Yeah.
A little 500, 600 person town is responsible for the bulk of the weed coming into this country.
That's so funny.
It's you know,
it's wild.
And I felt the story needed to be told, because you know, what prompted me really was I saw Billy Corbin's
documentary
Square Grouper.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, I like his style. I like the way he does the animations, and you know, and he's really good at production when it comes to that sort of thing. But the actual telling of the story, in my opinion, he missed the greatest story ever to be told. He talked about the Ethiopian Zion Coptic Church out of Jamaica, who set up an operation in a mansion on Star Island in Biscayne Bay in Miami.
Right.
We hauled millions of shit to that island for them. I mean,
really?
Yeah. And there was another group of guys at that time. This guy's he's a funny fucker. His name was Robert Flathorn. He was they called him the Black Tuna Gang, because everybody in the group had a gold pendant made of a tuna. Had a tuna. So if you're part of that clique, you had a tuna, black tuna, but whatever. They got into pot hauling back when President Carter was making quasi moves toward legalization and, you know, bringing that on. So they figured they're going to blaze the trail. They're going to go to Colombia, figure it out. They even used a High Times magazine. I don't know if you're familiar with High Times.
Oh, yeah, of course.
They used to give you the pot prices in the magazine. They were using that to figure out what their prices would be. You know, so they set up headquarters in the Fountain Blue Hotel downtown Miami in a penthouse suite. And their
South Beach, right?
South Beach. Their claim to fame was like £500,000 or some shit like that. The Zions, the Coptics, their claim to fame was like £1 million of weed moved in and shit like this. I got a hold, and I first heard George Young's story about him flying Mexican weed into the country and this and that, and his association with a guy named Diego in the movie, who in real life was Carlos Slater. That was who they're portraying. Right. And another guy who I happened to find a phone number on the internet for, just out of the blue, his name was Brian O'Day, and he wrote a book called High, Life of an International Drug Smuggler. His claim to fame was about 500,000 pounds of Asian weed that he brought into the Gulf of Alaska, processed it on a fishing vessel, put it in boxes and froze it, and brought it to the docks in Washington, just like it was a regular catch. And he would have a box of actual frozen fish sitting around. One of his guys every now and then would bump one, like then they just spill across the deck and be fish everywhere. So, you know, that's fish. Right. It's not weed going into that truck. Well, I'd taken these guys' claim to fame, you know, the Zions, the Tuna Gang, George Young, and Brian O'Day, and I put all their shit in a pile, and I said, well, fuck, that's not even a year's work for us, man. Yeah. You want to hear a story? Well, back the fuck up. Here comes a story, you know. So that's when I started writing this. And what I did at that time was I went back to Everglades, and, you know, writing a memoir and writing about the history of, you know, this genre, if you will, I needed to make sure that the stuff that I was writing just didn't come from what I thought took place, or I knew the guys. This guy did this, and I went back and talked to the older generations. I sat down with Craig, the youngest brother, and I wrote about what he told me, you know, about, you know, how things went for them and how they were arrested and how they were, you know, they were shunned in prison, and when they walked through the prison yard, it would open up like this, and they would get let through because they were whispering about the Everglades cartel. You know, which was a fucking joke, right? But people gave them the ultimate respect because of just the sheer volume of shit they managed to move, you know. And so I wrote there a little bit about their story in the book, and that little bit about them being sentenced in front of the magistrate with these ridiculous sentences, which brings me back around to the mandatory minimums that, and they weren't having the dramatic effect that they expected it to have, the busting and then all this kind of stuff. So they said, okay, mandatory minimums across the board. We're going to take away discretion from the magistrates and the judges across the country. We're going to give you a slide rule, rather, if you will, here and here. And whatever times it dictates that you get, that's what you're stuck with. There's no more discretion amongst the judges. They can't help you,
So
our hands are tied.
The amount that you're busted with equals a certain amount of years is what that means.
Well, what happens if you're over 2,000 kilograms, then you're majored. My indictments there were 4 of them. They were a mandatory 10 years to life on each count. They didn't actually catch me with anything. These are conspiracy counts.
Right.
Conspiracy to possess, to import more than 2,000 kilograms, conspiracy to sell, and some other crap.
How did they get your name? How did they know who you were?
That was interesting because the way it works is, when I was a kid doing this work, along with all the other kids, we never knew who the boss was. We never knew who was paying us. We didn't give a shit, who was paying us. As long as that paper bag got slid across the kitchen table, we were all happy, man. We didn't even care. So when I started taking, and doing jobs on my own, which only happened because everybody went to prison, and then 2 guys that I happened to know in Miami, just out of serendipitously, how it happened was I drove a Winnebago full of that 55 tons of shit because I didn't have enough drivers. I made 75 grand the first night hauling it inshore, and they paid me 35 grand to drive this fucking Winnebago brand new to Miami that had about 11,000 pounds of bales in it, and it couldn't go to the dead drops plaza because you got within 40 feet of this fucking thing, you could smell it, right?
Oh, fuck.
It had to go right to the house.
Okay.
So what Daryl needed was somebody he could trust to do this. So he said, and I go over there just to see what's going on, and I get shackled into this thing, man. He said, Timmy, come here. He says, I would like you to drive this to Miami if you wouldn't mind. I said, no, fuck, like that. And he said, it's a $35,000 job. I said, well, I just made 75 grand that night. I didn't give a fuck about the money. Right. But because of who it was asking me, I felt obligated. Yeah, okay, he's the boss. This is, okay, what the fuck? So we put airbags in the springs of this thing. And you inflate the airbags, and it lifts this Winnebago off the ground, right, so its ass is not sparking the highway when it's going down the road, right? So I'm driving this behemoth down fucking 41 all the way to Miami to Chrome Avenue, and I hang a right, and I go off, and I'm driving down and back into this orange field, and there's this looking castle. It looks like a castle. It just doesn't belong there. And I pull up the side door, and the guys jump out. They start unloading the shit, taking it into the basement. And the guys were teasing me before I took this ride. They were telling me about, how many people have been murdered in this house, man. And these guys are, these guys are insane, fucking Cuban freaks, like this. And
really,
I just was hearing it, It didn't occur to me it was that way at all. And it wasn't really. When I got over there, I had to spend the day. They'd asked me to spend the day because when the loads quit coming for that day, I was to drive a car with money in it back home. Because I drove the Winnebago, I needed to get home. So, so I don't know how much money was in this fucking car. It was jam-packed full. And I was there all day, playing cards and, goofing off, getting to know the guys and shit like that. So fast forward now, when everybody gets busted and shit, and they go to prison, they go to jail, and these guys still got work to do. They only knew one face. They never saw any of the other crew. Nobody ever drove to the stash houses. They were always dead dropped. Nobody knew anybody. That was the way it was kept. You don't know them. They don't know us. Right. I never saw your face. I don't know who the fuck you are or anything like this, but me. I was chosen to drive straight to the fucking house, spend the day with these guys. So now when everybody gets busted, and, it wasn't maybe 2-3 months later, I get a knock on my door and I open the door, and there's this guy, Jorge, from that fucking house in Miami. Timmy! It took them 3 weeks to find me. What? They knew my name was Tim. They knew what I looked like, but they took them 3 weeks, and they found me. And they said, Timmy, man, we got shit backing up. Can you do this work? And I just, you know, without even thinking about it, yeah, fuck yeah. Like that, you know.
What did they want you to do?
Haul the pot for them.
Okay.
The grown-ups weren't there to set the deals and go buy the shit and all that. They're in prison. These Cubans still had work to do. They needed us to continue doing the work. Well, the infrastructure was still there. Like I said earlier, the kids that did all the work, I mean, we were all there, you know, because they got the visible guys at that time, the older generations. Right. They had no idea the kids were doing this. Fuck, there were 20-year-old, 19, 20-year-old kids driving boats, you know, full of pot through the islands and shit. They never occurred to them. So I went back and got everybody was there. The only thing I had to figure out was how much to charge the fuckers, where to go get the shit, you know, and all this kind of stuff, which I wound up getting from one of the other generations, you know, keyed me in on their connection and how it's done and how to pay. And the price I had come up with, you know, on my own was pretty close to what they were charging, because by that time I had worked almost every position. I was a bail handler. I was loading cars. I was unloading freighters. I was, you know, whenever they needed somebody, I worked it, and then I got paid that pay. Well, the pay scales are different for every job you do. The bail handlers get $5 grand a night. The guys that drive the cars will get 30 grand a trip. They pay their drivers out of that. You know, the guys that have the smaller boats that come out to get the shit from our boat, from the mothership, those little boats making it through the islands, they're about 35 grand a piece. They pay their guy on board out of that. We're on the big boat with the load. I make 75 or 100 grand a night. So that's how it all works. So I just reverse engineered the math. Right. And came up with a number about how many people we needed for this, and it was pretty close. Now, there's two ways to do it. There's pay me $175 a pound. I'll go to Colombia, Jamaica, Central America, wherever the fuck you want, and get your shit and put it on your doorstep in Miami for $175 a pound. Or you can pay me $145 a pound. You go get the shit. You bring it out here offshore. I'll come and unload you and bring it and put it on your doorstep in Miami. I'll do it that way. But most of the guys opted for me to just do the whole fucking thing because they didn't want to bother with it. Right. And that's how it worked.
Wow, man.
And I just managed figuring that. So I went from being this guy that was running offshore unloading boats. It's just all of a sudden I'm the guy that's
now you're making it all happen.
Yeah. So so I get the first job in. Everybody's paid. Everybody's happy. So we do another one, and that's when the guy started, you know, with me about the cocaine. You know, it's a load of coke, dude. Hey, man, it's fucking easy. I'm like, no. For one reason, there's, you know, a whole different crowd of people fucking around with that shit, and and then I told him about the holding money kind of thing. I didn't want to do that either. But little did I know that the only two guys from Miami that I mentioned in my book are Carlito and Leo. Carlito and Leo, as it turns out, wound up being two soldiers of Griselda Blanco.
Really? Holy shit!
I didn't know this until I researching my own shit. You know? So and then it finally occurred to me. I'm thinking, yeah, okay, what? So you know, we're counting money, you know, and the loads are getting bigger, so the cash is getting more. Some of the jobs are going for, you know, $25–30 million, and I'm taking my cut out of that. Well, they get their cut. So I've got to count. I'm counting, you know, at any time my crew's, you know, 10, 12, 15, 20 million for my crew, and I've got to count it. So we had at one point 4 money machines that the banks use, you know, going constantly, and we had hundreds in one bedroom, 50s in another, 20s in another, 10s in another, and 5s in the garage. Because I mean, $5 bills were ridiculous. Nobody wanted them.
Crazy.
Because
just burn them, right?
Just $50,000 in $5 bills is as big as this fucking table, you know. But the thing of it was when I got paid, or anybody did really, you couldn't just take hundreds. I had to take multiples of denominations, you know, spread it out a little bit like that. So, you know,
why was that?
Well, it's because, I mean, it's just a fair thing to do.
Okay.
Somebody's going to wind up with a fucking garage full of 5s.
Yeah.
You know, who's going to want that?
Right.
And, you know, 80% of them $5 bill. And I got a bundle of them one time, $5 bills. They're shrunk wrap, you know, in a probably about a 1x1 square like this. Opened it up and they were moldy. It was mildewed because money mildews.
Yeah.
And they put these goddamn rubber bands around them, and the bacteria on the rubber bands starts on the money starts to deteriorate in the rubber bands. You know how a rubber band gets after a while.
Oh yeah.
It falls apart and shit like that.
Right.
Well, that's because money's nasty, you know. And I've gotten paid with $20 bills that were and the mold flying out of them. Shit, just you know, because the money's just being handed like this. It's never getting time to spend it at that level.
Right.
So I get a, you know, I do this job. We're over there counting money, and I should be in Colombia, or I should be helping my crew with another load, but I'm stuck counting goddamn money, you know, because now our paydays are getting up toward, you know, 15, 20 million. It takes a while to count that kind of money, man. People just they don't grasp. You see these movies, you know, of a guy, you know, carrying around a bag that's got $1 million in it. He's running, and he's slinging that fucking. There's no fucking way he's slinging that bag around.
How long does it take for one of those money machines, or 3 of those money machines, to process $10 million?
Days.
Nonstop.
Because they're not only doing just hundreds, you're doing hundreds, 20s, 10s, 5s. You're doing all these denominations. So when the guys go into the room, they shovel in a bunch of money into a fucking laundry basket, bring it out to us. We're popping rubber bands and stuffing this thing in, and it's counting and we're ledgering, and it's just taking for goddamn ever, man. So just out of, you know, sheer screwing and fucking around in those days with triple beams and the cocaine and that kind of shit, you know, guys would, you know, do a line and they'd throw their fucking bill on the scale and just fucking around. It weighs a gram.
Weigh it.
Every bill, no matter what denomination it is, weighs a gram.
That's crazy.
Look it up on the internet, dude.
That's insane.
They'll actually tell you now on the internet how much money weighs. So if every bill, no matter what denomination, weighs a gram, there's 28 of them in an ounce. There's 16 of them in a pound. Dude, it's just math from that point on.
Right.
So now we're taking these baskets, setting the basket on the scale. We have to count the bundles that we throw in there. The first time around, we're at, say, hundreds, 20s, 10s. We're counting the bundles until we got $1 million worth of, say, $20 bills in this basket, and it weighs X amount. We have to subtract the weight of the rubber bands on the bills. So if there's 2 rubber bands on each bound pack of bills, that's 2 grams. So we had to count the bundles so we could subtract the grams for the rubber bands, and the money comes out exactly on the dollar.
That's fucking crazy.
110 pounds in $20 bills is $1 million.
110 pounds in 20s.
In 20s. 22.2 pounds is $1 million in 100s.
I remember reading in the book that Pablo Escobar's brother wrote. I think it was called The Accountant Story, something like that. I remember he wrote, because he was the one who was like accounting for every single expense. I remember he said that they were spending around 10 grand a month on rubber bands.
Yeah. You know, it's funny you should bring that up. It's reminded me. We were taking so much shit. I mean, dude, you have to read the book, Saltwater Cowboy, Rise and Fall of a Marijuana Empire. You can find it on Amazon, just about anywhere. We were bringing so much shit out of South America. They were running out of stuff, out of bags to put it in. First, we're getting coffee bags, burlap coffee bags, because coffee's a big product, and they got us, you know, they got burlap bags, coffee burlap bags all over the fucking place. Well, we used all of them that we could use. Now we're getting, and it's the first time I'd had ever seen this. I never knew Purina made horse chow and monkey chow and, you know, cat chow for lions and shit like that.
Really?
For zoos.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that either.
So now we're getting bags that are got Purina monkey chow written on the side of them, you know, because they're out of burlap bags. When we're using every fucking bag in South America, sugar, you know, those then they started going to the nylon woven out of the burlap kind of thing, and we used every kind of fucking. I saw a whole boatload of weed, 20 tons of shit, boxed in Marlboro containers.
Really? That's funny.
They said regular Marlboro cigarettes on them because we were taking so much shit. They were running out of stuff to put it in.
When was the first time you actually went down to Colombia yourself?
Oh, that was in I think late '84. Okay, somewhere like that.
And what spawned that decision?
When Jorge showed up at my door that day.
Oh, really?
And he knocked on the door and said, "Timmy, we got shit to do, man. Can you do this?" And I said, "Yeah." So I go back to Everglades and find everybody and say, we're going to work. We want to do this. We want to work. And they said, "Okay, what we need you to do is we need you to go get it. You go pick it out. You weigh it. You go get it. And you go. The first one, you bring it. You take care of all of it. Bring it for us." So Carlito and Leo had a jet that their gang used. It was a corporate Lear at that time.
Okay.
And he said, "Come on, let's." He says, I took my buddy Franco. He was Spanish dude to translate for me. So we hop on this plane. It's only like a 5.5 hour flight, depending on the wind speed and all that kind of shit. It's only 5 hours to South America.
Right.
So I agreed. I'd go down there. I'd weigh I'd find the shit. I'd chest it. I'd try it. I'd weigh it. Make sure they're getting a good product, and I'd get it back for them. Send a boat for it, and like that. So hop on the plane, me and my buddy, and we fly down there, and we land, and they pick us up in a fucking Bronco.
Really?
Yeah. This thing was badass, dude. It looked like you remember that Romancing the Stone? You ever see that movie with Michael Douglas?
I don't think so.
And he's got this Colombian guy's got his little mule. His little mule's a Bronco.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was just funny as shit. So
that's hilarious. That's
we
perfect.
get there, and I meet the guy, and he was just, I didn't meet him the first day. We flew in, we went to the house, and you could see the house from the plane, from the jet before we landed. I mean, this is huge, beautiful home out in the middle of nowhere. And the landing strip was carved out of the jungle floor. It wasn't paved. It was just very well maintained. And when you're flying out there and all you're seeing is a sea of green, and then out pops this little strip of white out of nowhere. And
you were to land a Learjet on it.
That's where they're landing this little fucking jet right on this thing. It was designed, made perfectly for it.
Wow.
So we get there, and he takes us to this apartment at the back of the house, and this is 5 times bigger than my house at home. The apartment. So we're hanging out, and it sounds rather cliche, but he had VHS. Just come out of the Betamax, which were the great big giant fucking ones. Yeah. Then they went on to the VHS and watched Scarface. We put Scarface on. They had bowls of Coke all over the apartment.
Really?
Yeah. So we're in there just chilling from the trip, and I got fucking whacked, and I can't eat.
Right.
I'm doing one of these, So we walk through the garden, we get into this thing, we have dinner and shit, So we're having this party, and there's all these women in the house, and there's guys that I met from, that day we were out weighing the shit, and what we were doing was weighing. Is the boss shows up that afternoon. He comes into the house. He doesn't speak a lick of English. And he's got this T-shirt on with a big smiley face. On the front of it says, "Have a nice day," like this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he walks past me, and he gets back. And on the back of it's the same smiley face with a smoking bullet hole in its head, like that, and it says "or else." On the back of it, I thought he's got camo type fucking army fatigues on with a gun belt on and a holster pistol and combat boots on. And he's got this goofy fucking smiley face T-shirt.
What the fuck?
And it said, I get to this picture's in my mind of this smiley face, and then he walks past me and it's got a smoking bullet hole in his fucking head. I'm thinking, God, this guy's
so
fucking
bizarre,
insane.
Man.
So he says, he's talking, how was your trip, blah, blah, blah. He says, do you want to see your stuff? And I said, yeah, let's go, he says. And he's first one out the door. He grabs an AR and heads for the truck. His 2 boys grab ARs, and my guy grabs an AR, and I was figuring, oh, fuck it. I've never handled guns in my life, man. We didn't do guns.
Right, you didn't need them.
Didn't need them at that level, and I'll get to that too. So I fucking grabbed one, and I go out, we get in the Bronco, and we drive, and we're going through brush and bush and all kind of shit, and we get to truck stops, and as soon as the guy opens the door, smack me in the face with this Colombian weed smell and burlap. That smell I'll remember for the day I die. It's just I wish I'd make a cologne out of it or something, you know. But pulls these leathery branches and leaves apart and shit. Like, and there's this mountain of shit, dude. It looked like an Incan fucking ruin. He's got these bales stacked as high as your ceiling here. What's that, about 8-9 feet? And they're probably 20 feet wide in rows of maybe 40, 50 feet long, going off into the jungle like this, of bales, already packaged, already ready to go. And he hands me a bamboo pole about 7 foot long with a piece of pipe on the end of it, cut, slashed like that, like a hypodermic. And he's sticking the pieces of bales like this, and he's pulling it out. And we're using his pipe. We're testing it. I'm smoking this shit. I said, well, how many of them fuckers you got up there? And his guy's up there, he's kicking them off. He's kicking off every one of those you got. And I got a spray can in my hand, and I'm putting my mark on the bales. Right. They're weighing them as I'm going through and picking them. And when I picked out, 20 tons of whatever shit I need, and I got my mark on them, and they're all weighed up, we go to the house to have this party. So that's when we have the coke, and we go and then we begin to meet the people and dinner and after dinner party and all this kind of shit. So there's all these people around the house, and I'm sitting in a chair, and he's sitting in front of me, and we're translating back and forth. And this guy walks in. I hadn't seen this guy before. Comes up behind the boss. This is what I call him. I'll never say his real name. I always called him a boss in the book. And he's like this in his ear. He's up behind his head. He's like that. And he gets this real ashen look on his face. And right away, I'm thinking, oh, what the fuck? And he sets his drink down. He gets up, and he's like fast-paced walking out of the room. I put my drink down. I'm fast-paced following his ass out of the room. He goes down the hallway into the kitchen, out the kitchen door onto a veranda, down these fucking veranda stairs into the backyard, and he bolts off running. And I'm on his ass. I mean, I'm following this fucking guy.
What made you want to follow him?
Dude, if the guy that owns the fucking place is running out of the house, my ass is going too. Right. So he dives into the bushes. All the floodlights are pointing toward the house. So we get into the jungle behind the lights, and you can't see. I ran about 20 feet past that bucker and like dove like a sprinter off the starting blocks into the bushes, and I laid there. And I'm waiting for all hell to break loose, man. And I'm sitting there sweating, and fucking mosquitoes the size of dragonflies. And all of a sudden, I hear this voice out the back door of the house, Spanish like this. And then I hear this fucking guy laughing. And now I'm thinking, what in the fuck is going on, man? I mean, just, I'm drenched with sweat. I got shit all over me. And I see him now. He's in the floodlights. He's walking up to the house, and I'm brushing myself off. And by the time I get back to my chair, he's already in his chair with a drink, and he's, wiping the sweat off his shit. I sit down, and he looks over at me, and he says to the guy standing next to him, and that guy walks over to me and goes, "Where in the hell did you think you were going?" To me. Yeah. And that's when I told him what I told you. I said, when the big dog gets up and runs out of the fucking house, this is what I told him. Runs out of the fucking house, my ass is going too. And he started laughing. He's cracking up fucking laughing, right? Turns out he gets this message that his wife's coming up the mountain.
Oh, shit.
He's got guys all the way up and down. He says, she left town knowing we were coming. She was going to stay with the in-laws while we did business and take the kids and just be out of the way. Right. Well, he's having this fucking party. There's whores everywhere. And there's all kinds of people in this mansion, right? And here he is. So he figures if he runs out of there, he ain't there. He's not responsible for what's going on in the fucking house, right? Right. Turns out it wasn't even his wife.
Oh, my God.
That's what the joke was. That's what was so
hilarious.
So that was my first trip to Colombia, was this fucking guy. And he just turned out to be he's an okay guy. He's just typical Colombian looking, hair greased back, long. And
you refer to this guy as the boss in your book.
The boss. He's the boss.
And is this the same guy you dealt with every time you went to Colombia?
Every time I went to Colombia. Yeah.
Did he ever get popped, or did he ever get busted?
Never. Never. He actually, we, of course, throughout the years, we all lost contact with one another. Right. When this shit went down, I didn't want to run into anybody. Right. Even some of the guys where I grew up with, we, kind of, or you had to actually, because when you're an ex-con, you can't hang around with ex-cons, or you violating some fucking shit. But, yeah, we didn't remain friends, but we were good friends while that was all going on. He actually, if you remember, of course you know the story Blow,
right?
The movie. Well, there's a scene in the movie where George and Diego, Carlos later, take their money to Panama and put it in a Panama bank.
Mm-hmm.
And George makes the comment about, wow, I give you $30 million and you give me this little book back, you know, and they take off. So later on when he wants to get out, Diego starts working on Norman's Cay in the Bahamas,
right,
on that island.
Right.
That island is actually called Norman's Cay, and it actually does exist.
Okay.
And it was used exactly for that because Carlos later used it for that, who Diego was supposed to be in the movie.
Right.
So, story goes on. George decides to get the fuck out of the business and all this kind of shit. He goes back down to Panama to get his money, and the guy says, well, you should have called. He said, the president of the bank says, you probably should have called because your money has been appropriated by the government of Panama. 2 years prior to that, 3 years prior to that or so, my guy in Colombia told me when I did a job for Noriega, I told you this. I didn't know who it was for. The guy wanted 60,000 pounds, and I'm like, I don't give a fuck who. As long as Carlito and Leo bring me the money, I don't meet anybody.
Right.
I don't need to know anybody but you guys. I give you, you pay me, and this kind of shit.
Right, exactly.
So they wanted 60,000 pounds, and at that time, I could do 60,000 pounds, but I had to go to the boat twice because I couldn't get it all in once. I didn't have enough boats to go, you know, at that time to get it all in one shot. So I was going to do this very serendipitously with the same boat. So we get 60 pounds. I said, give me show me the boat. What's it look like? Give me a schematic. Let me show you, how you're going to load this fucking thing. You know, because if you're going to sit out there all night long, you can't just have the shit laying everywhere. Right. You know, especially if I approach it and leave it. I mean, now you're wide open. So I find in the drawings of this vessel in the front of the vessel is called the forecastle, and in front of the forecastle is a maintenance bilge, maintenance hatch that you get to, and maintenance bilge, just big enough to put 30,000 pounds of shit in, you know. But there's a maintenance hatch, the maintenance closet you go through to get to the hatch to get down to the bilge room, you know, to check whatever that needs to be checked, and those are all watertight. Doors because they're going to the bilge of the boat. Right. Then I said, don't press your bales any bigger than you can get through that hatch. Put 30,000 pounds of it, put half of it down there, shut that hatch, and if you've ever been aboard a boat, a vessel, or any kind of seagoing giant ship, where they have watertight doors or where they don't have watertight doors, they have a threshold that you have to step over. Right. You step through and into the room. Yep. The threshold is usually 14, 16 inches tall. Well, when you close the hatch to the bilge down below, it only stuck 4 inches above the floor. I said, put half the load down there, shut that hatch, and the maintenance hatch wasn't any bigger than, you know, twice the size of your table here, the room itself. Right. I said, put 5 inches of concrete in there on that floor and cover that fucking thing up, and they'll never know it's there. And put your brooms and your buckets and your shit and your rags and throw them all back in there. So when I come the first night, you get the first 30,000 pounds in the main is in the main midship hold. I'll get that the first night. You put that on deck, I come and get it. When I call you the next night, you jackhammer that hole open, take that other 30,000 out and get it ready to go, and I'll take it then. So I get the first 30,000 and we're headed back in. We're about 2 hours into our trip, and I get a frantic call from the captain of that boat, dude. And he's talking about, send your chase boat back. He says a plane looked like the Marine Patrol or somebody, a Coast Guard, just flew over the boat. He said, send your boat back for us. And I said, you know what? Fuck you, dude. I said, how in the hell do we know that they don't know we're out here? You know, right. That's my getaway. I paid for that fucker, not you. Right. You know, this is the game we play, dude. That's pretty much what I said to him. I said, hey, this is a game you play. Right. And whether or not something would happen, whether it did or it didn't, it's just the way it is. Right. Well, as it turns out, the next day we're unloading. They were sending this shit to Miami, getting ready, keyed up for the next night. Turns out that they went out and boarded the vessel. He has the foresight to call back to Panama and saying we're being boarded. The Panamanian registered vessel. So they reported hijacked at sea out of Panama. Okay. The when they boarded the vessel, there was residue from the first 30,000 pounds of shit that was in there.
Right.
From in the main ship hold.
Right.
So they confiscate the vessel, they arrest the crew and the captain and shit, and they tow the vessel into Tampa.
Right.
They held the boat for 4 months for evidence. They couldn't keep the vessel because it was a Panamanian registry and it was a hijacked vessel.
Right.
Well, because of all the residue and shit that was in the first hold of the boat, they never knew the other 30,000 pounds was still in there.
Under the concrete.
Under the concrete. They deported the boat back to Panama. Noriega put another crew on it.
No fucking way, man. That's so crazy.
Oh, man. It was just like, you know, and at that time, it didn't seem like anything to me. It just seemed like, wow, what a stroke of luck that was. And that's when George shows back up with this handwritten note from Noriega to me in Spanish. And all it said was, it said, holy shit, my friend, how in the fuck did you do that? That's all it said. And I wished I'd have kept that thing, man, because it's, be worth it.
Oh my God. Could you imagine?
And ironically enough, then when I was busted in 87 or 88 it was, they were just coming to the end of Operation, what the hell was it? It'll come to me. But when they got Noriega, they captured Noriega and they brought him to the United States. They put him in Miami MCC, Metropolitan Correctional. That's where I was.
Oh, really?
They put him in the same fucking place I was. But we never knew one another. But they put him in the seg, where you're
segregated?
Segregation.
Okay.
It's a whole different yard that you can get into and stuff like that. But we could see each other through the fences.
You knew what he looked like?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Who didn't know what Noriega looked like, man?
That's
a pock-marked face and shit. Just
right.
a short fucking guy.
Right.
It's a piece of shit. Really nobody I ever wanted to deal with.
Right.
But I didn't have to deal with him directly.
Right.
I'll take his goddamn money for sure.
For sure, yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of ironic. We wound up the same place together at that time. But he wound up he finished his time here in America about 5 years ago, and he was extradited to France, where he'll probably die in prison in France.
Oh, he's in prison right now in France.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. But that's my little run-in with that dude.
Wow, man. Fucking crazy shit. How does it make you feel nowadays seeing the shit that's going on, especially in our country and in Florida with where they're regulating the pot business? And I think there was some company, I just read the other day that some company, this happened in March or something, but a company called True Leave bought another company for $2.5 billion. Yeah. Harvest, a company called Harvest, was purchased for $2 billion for Florida dispensaries. Fucking crazy shit.
I'm kind of thinking I should get some fucking credit back or some shit, But I didn't do too bad, I mean, you read the book really tells the whole tale from A to Z. And when they changed the federal sentencing guidelines to those absurd mandatory minimums, that meant none of us were getting out of prison.
Right.
I mean,
well, you only what did you actually get charged with?
You mean time wise?
Yeah, initially.
160 years mandatory to life.
160. Oh.
And $16 million in fines. Because there's a $1 million fine.
Yeah, look at that. $2.1 billion blockbuster deal with Arizona's biggest marijuana company.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
wow.
they bought, I think it was True Leave. Yeah, Florida. So True Leave, the largest marijuana company in Florida, bought Harvest, the largest marijuana company in Arizona, for $2.1 billion.
Probably pay it off in the first year. At the prices that they're selling the shit for, dude. I got a medical card, but I'll be goddamned if I'm going to go spend $60 on
it's so overpriced.
It's insane. It really is insane, and it's worse for the patients, because I know what it costs to grow this shit. So does anybody else that grows it. They know what it costs. Very little, upfront costs. Yeah, because you're doing hydroponics, you're doing lighting, you're doing all this new type shit.
Yeah.
That's going on. It's inexpensive to start up, and you very rarely within the first 5 years or so see any red. It's just that way. But at the prices that they're selling the shit at, man, you'd think it would be, I mean,
it's insane, man.
It is. This is stupid. But
well, at least they're not putting people in jail, though. You know, at least they're not fucking locking people up for 10 years for selling a dime bag.
Right. You know, and that's another thing too. When I was speaking about the mandatory minimums, when they arrested us and our crew, I was one of the first 38 to go. I don't know if you have that picture or not of that front page, but
yeah, we have it.
What wound up happening is after that first, you know, they said it had 150 tons. Over 150 tons. After the first 2-3 weeks, what they realized was that almost nearly 400,000 pounds was only about a week's work. That's when they knew what kind of a can of fish they opened up. Then when they started affecting these arrests, the first 38 went, and then it's so on and so on. And it happened by way of, you asked this earlier, by way of a guy that was part of the crew, had been part of the crew born and raised there.
Right.
Was doing some crazy cocaine shit in Colombia and got himself busted and put in prison. Well, the U.S. government found out that he was in prison down there and who he was, where he lived and all this kind of crap, and he was associated with us. They went down there and offered him a deal, said, look, we'll get you out of here if you can do this for us. We need, you know, this is what we need. Well, they got him out and brought him back, put him right back into our group. We never knew he was gone. We never knew he was in Colombia, never knew he was, you know, had any problems or anything like that. He just all of a sudden, you know, he was gone. Now he's there. Hired him as a chase boat driver.
Oh, no.
For a job that I put together with 57,000 pounds because I was splitting the load between two places, Pine Island and Everglades City. And he was the chase boat driver on the Pine Island side of it. So they knew about it right from the get-go. Now, what happens is the bust goes down. Nobody gets caught. They get all. It was in the paper actually back then. They called it the Pine Island dump because there was weed everywhere, man. Then everybody took off like flies, gone. You know, so this guy who they caught, I'm not going to say any names.
Yeah.
The guy that they caught, you know, starts telling some of the younger crew. You know, these guys, you know, dude, it's over. They got you, man. They get you. They know your name. They know who you are, blah, blah, blah. They've changed everything around now. It's a mandatory 40 years, brother. You're gone at least 40 years. No doubt about it. And there's no parole. None. You do 85% of your time. And when you tell a 19, 20-year-old kid that, he's going to tell on his fucking grandma.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
So it started out with just a couple of them, you know, a couple of the younger guys that they knew they could roll. And then that's when the shit started to happen. People started becoming visible because names were being said. And it began a domino effect. But along with that domino effect, and this is an interesting part about it. Now, this was information given to me by the supervisor for United States Homeland Security here in Southwest Florida and the supervisor for United States Customs at the time told me that they understood that, you know, while they're effecting these arrests, that they're only arresting kids. All the adults have already been arrested, man. There's nothing but kids left. So giving a mandatory life sentence and all these ridiculous $1 million fines to a bunch of kids just didn't really kind of sit good with them, didn't sit with them. So what they did was, by design rather than by accident, they incorporated within these plea agreements to the people that they're catching, these kids that they're catching, they say, look, you tell us everything you know, everybody you know, everything that you've done. We'll give you immunity from prosecution from everything that you've done. Except for one count. We'll hold one count back so we can, you know, we got to give you something.
Yeah.
You know, and at that point, depending on their cooperation, how substantial or whatever it may be, would determine whether you got going home, you getting parole, you getting 2 years, you getting a year, you know, what are you going to get? Now they can sentence you if you cooperate. Guidelines state they can now sentence you below the mandatory minimums. That's the only way you're dodging a life sentence is if you cooperate. So what happened was, by the language of that cooperation plea agreement, was by giving them immunity. Jimmy can tell on you. Freddie can tell on you. Your name's already been spoken. You got immunity. You can't be hurt. They get immunity. They get immunity. Everybody's telling and running and saying names, but they all have immunity, so they can't hurt one another. Right. And it was an amazing thing about how they did it was, and it didn't matter that at the time that, you know, a lot of the guys are saying a lot of the same names. All that told the government was they're getting all the right people. But putting kids away for life for hauling pot when just the year before their fathers and uncles and grandpas and cousins and shit are doing 8, 10, 12 months and getting hot and going home, and you're going to get a life sentence for it, didn't really set easy for them. But what it did manage to do was,
glad the government was able to find its conscience.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was unprecedented.
Yeah,
you know, in the fact that, you know, if it hadn't have been, you know, us kids, you know, if it had been a bunch of guys toting guns and shooting, and
right.
That was another thing too. None of us carried guns.
Right.
Fuck, man, we could run around with cutoffs and bare feet.
Right.
You know, that was the
right.
the clothing you wore. That was the island garb, man. You know, you worked on the boat. You go out crab fishing. You got on a pair of slickers and a pair of boots,
right,
fishing boots, and under that you got a pair of cutoffs on. So what they weren't willing to do at that time when they pronounced these significant sentences, or these guidelines, was put away kids for the rest of their lives. So what they did was they offered them this agreement, and within the agreement was that clause, was that escape valve, which allowed everybody to say, look, dude, they said your name, John. Dude, you're going to prison. But if you cooperate with them, tell them me, tell them my name, give them Jimmy's name, give them Fred's, give them Paul's name. Tell on them, cooperate with them, and you can't hurt them. They already got immunity.
Right.
See? So it worked out great. And it comes to a guy like me, fuckers, they want to know who I'm seeing in Miami all the time, who I'm flying, where am I flying out of the country to 2-3 times a month. And we know, we got pictures of the plane. You get on and you get off. You know, they had everything, man. And I said, well, you know what, guys? I said, this is something that you're going to have to figure out on your own. I said, because if I start that shit, I'm opening up a can of worms that just can't put the lid back on. Even though throughout all the years that this was done, it was, you know, our fathers and uncles and grandpas and people like that and us kids, not a single shot was ever fired. Not a gun was ever seen. I never saw a fucking gun.
That's fun. That's crazy, man.
And there's a really very simple reason for that. It's because of the sheer volume of money that's being made.
Right.
And the amount of money being put forth to make that. It was very insignificant to make, you know.
But what made the cocaine aspect of it in Miami? Why was there so much death? There was like an untold amount of death in Miami.
Because it was very easy to bring into the country. Because of, you know, if you bring 10,000 pounds of cocaine in the country, you can do it relatively easy. 10,000 pounds of fucking weed would fill this room. Right. You know, that and the fact that there's more money involved in it. Lot more money, because you can take that pure cocaine and you can chop it down to make 1 kilo into 4. But by the time that kilo gets to the United States, it's worth, at that time I think kilos were about 30 grand. Now they're somewhere around 65 grand. But you can turn that $30,000 into, you know, almost $1 million if you're a dealer. You know, so that's the reason for the big deal with cocaine. Then the crack came along. Right. You know, so now you're making more money off the cocaine by selling the crack rocks, right? You know, and that kind of thing. I really don't know how the chemistry works or how the math works on all of that, but I just know that, you know, it's something that we never agreed with, really. I mean, we all had our share of coke, and we'd do it, you know, till we got sick of doing it. But wanting to get into doing that, no. And people ask me, well,
do you think it's the nature of the drug, the nature of the cocaine, the people that you're selling the cocaine to,
it's that stigma. It's that whole crowd. It's that people you're selling it to. You know, at that time it was considered, you know, for the rich, the wealthy, the fabulous, the you know, this and that. Well, then the Miami became awash in it, and now grams are going. When grams were going for $120, now they're going for 50. You know, or you get an 8-ball for $100, you know, or some shit like that. Right. Now everybody's doing it. Yeah. And everybody's making money, and everybody wants to make money, so everybody wants to be that cocaine cowboy, man. Yeah. Everybody wants to be the man. And you start killing them, you're killing your competition. That's what started the war. In 1979 or 1980, somewhere between there, Time magazine wrote an article about Miami, and they called it Paradise Lost.
I remember that.
It was
across
the front of the magazine, Paradise Lost, and that's because Miami was being run by the cartel, literally. And they called on the United States government to come down and help because they couldn't handle it.
Right.
Now you got cops running around with 38s, and they're being, shot at with automatic weapons, AK-47s, military-style weaponry.
Right.
The first hint of this was the Dadeland massacre.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is, exactly.
Wow, man.
The
legendary Times cover.
Yep. And what brought that on was that fight. What turned it into a fight with the United States government rather than the state government was they called it the Dadeland massacre. These guys, these cocaine cowboys, the Cubans, went in there to ABC liquor store to kill two guys. Two guys. They killed everybody in the store. Plus, they shot anybody that was walking around in the parking lot, too, and then left. That set the pace. That was a whole new ball game. Now the cops are outgunned. You're gonna go up against an AK with a 38? I don't fucking think so.
No.
So they had to rethink their whole strategy. They had to bring the United States government in. That's when the whole shit went down. So that's when they said, "Look, we got this under control. Now let's see what's going on over here." So that's when they started knocking on our door. Although we weren't violent in any stretch of the imagination, we weren't violent, and there's no way that crap that was taking place in Miami could have ever found its way to Everglades City and that being taken over because it's a little fishing village. It's been there since the early 1800s.
Right.
It's family oriented. It's 10,000 islands. You don't know shit, dude, unless you were raised there. I can lose you in 30 seconds.
Right.
And you'll be one island away from town and not know it. And you probably die there. It's just the way it is. So you don't come in and take an area over like that. You take advantage and make use of the people and the infrastructure that's already there. Right. That's why nobody fucked with us.
Right.
Nobody wanted it because they couldn't. We had the vessels, we had the know-how, we had the ability, we had the, the wherewithal. So that's how it managed to go for as long as it did. It's
incredible, and how you were so close. You were just a hop, a skip, and a jump away from that metropolitan hellhole called Miami.
Yeah. And, there was so much going on. There was so much killing and so much of that going on that, it gave law enforcement a bad taste in their mouth, regardless of which product you were messing with. They came into Everglades City with shotguns and rifles, and the guys are, the captains running around yelling, "Make sure your rifles are loaded. Make sure your shotguns have got plenty of ammo." And you're like, "What the fuck?
Yeah,
are you raiding a village in Nam or something?"
Right?
Oh, fuck me, man. Most of the guys that the second time around, we're just older guys, and a lot of them didn't even smoke weed.
Right.
They just did it because they were supplementing an income that the government tried to fuck them out of. So they sat on a front porch, smoked cigarettes, just wait for the show to start. Nothing they could do about it.
Oh, my. Incredible, man. And fucking fascinating.
Yeah, so there was, talking about this guy, Ron, my buddy from the CIA. He was involved with... we had done a job one night actually. We got pretty ballsy sometimes. And we brought this boat right into town, right into Everglades City, loaded with bales below deck. You can only get so many pounds. You could probably get maybe, depending on the size of the boat, maybe 15,000 pounds of bales stuffed just right under the boat. We bring it right into town and park it and go away from it till dark and then come back. Well, somehow somebody walked past there, the tourist or somebody was looking at the boats and shit, and they smell the fucking weed, and they call the cops and they bust the boat. Here comes the the DEA and the sheriff's department and everybody in there. And my buddy Ron, when he's showing me those pictures of my money and the MBI guys like this, he's got a picture of himself and his other buddy Ron in the bilge of our boat. The boat was called Risky Business. It was a crab boat, and they got pictures of them down below, amongst the bales, big deal. And they got them lined up.
Perfect name for your boat.
They got them lined up on the dock. The bales are stacking up. They got pictures of them like this and that. So long story short, the boat gets confiscated, obviously, and they tow it out of there. Well, these boats, when they're taken, like this, they go up for government auction. anybody can go bid on these boats. So what do our guys do? Go to the government auction and bid on our own boat and buy it back.
Wow.
They go, I shit you not.
That boat should be in a museum.
They put it in. Check this out, though. They get to the auction. They don't care what they cost, you know.
Right.
Outbid everybody on the fucking. They got money to spare.
Right.
So they get the boat. They bring it back. They re-register it. Change the name to Still Kicking. This is like a big fuck you.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's fucking awesome. So you ended up doing 4 years.
Yeah.
4 years total. Did they get all your cash? That picture? I mean, they put it back in the safe. You
yeah.
said, right?
No. That wound up going to
the government. Took all your money.
Well, the lawyer took a lot of it.
Yeah.
In cash. You know, the attorney I hired here in town, it was too high profile of a case for him.
Right.
So he was kind of freaking out a little bit.
That's funny. Usually attorneys like the high profile.
Yeah, well, this wasn't your typical fucking dime bag salesman going on here, you know. But he says, my father-in-law is a pretty high-priced criminal attorney out of Baltimore. He said, let me give him a call. He cost me $750,000.
Ooh.
Just to start off with, you know. But he did wonders. He was worth every dime I paid for him.
Oh man.
What it wound up being was, excuse me. I'm sitting here at my attorney's office, and when I sit down, he slides what's called discovery. Mm-hmm. Familiar with this? I'm
familiar with it. Yeah.
This is all the evidence that the prosecuting attorney has against you. They can't hold anything back.
They have to give you all of it.
No surprises.
Mm-hmm.
And that fucking thing is this deep with paper.
Wow.
Everybody that said my name, that knew me as who I was.
Wow.
You know, because a lot of people don't know. I mean, there's hundreds of people. I mean, 5 crews. There was an Everglades City crew. There was a Goodland crew, Marco Island crew, a Naples crew, and a Pine Island crew. We're talking anywhere from 70 to 100 guys on each crew. There's no way that maybe just a handful of them know who the boss is. Like I told you earlier, nobody gives a shit.
Right, right.
But ultimately, it comes to light that, yeah, you know, I'm the guy. I'm that's doing this shit, and I'm setting the deals up. Actually, I was set up one day and didn't realize this until after I had gotten busted. I was sitting in a bar in a club down in Naples, owned by the ex-sheriff's son, and I was having a conversation with a guy about unloading his shrimp boat. You know, talking money and deals and when and we, you know, walked away from that, and nothing really came of it, which usually happens. And I get busted that day. That day I get busted. I get hauled into Fort Myers. I'm in the federal building, and I'm talking to the guy, and this guy looks over at me and goes, get big white fuzzy beard, and he's got blonde, white hair, and he says, hey, Timmy, remember me? And I'm looking at him like this, and he's a little bit older, and I just do this at him like this, and I said, oh, man, you're that fucker I had a drink with in the bar that day, aren't you? He said, that's me. I was set up by that guy who owned the bar doing a deal for this. But they never busted me for that because there was nothing, you know, to come of it. But ultimately, when they did figure out, you know, who I was, that's when they wanted to know who's in Miami and who's in South America and all this like this. And I said, look, you just might as well just shoot me.
Shoot you and your whole family.
Shoot everybody I know, my family, and all this kind of shit. Because, you know, even though there was no violence involved ever in anything that we did, you pop the cork on one of these fucking guys, and they're going to do exactly what they're very good at, and that's shutting you the fuck up. So I couldn't tell him anything. I couldn't tell him anything about that. I had to take my lumps, you know. But my saving grace came when everybody else was getting this deal. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of guys. You know, there were kids 19, 20 years old, you know, bail handling and shit. My saving grace came after, you know, like about 7, 8 months of sitting in Fort Myers County Jail. 2 United States Treasury officers came to visit me, a man and a woman, 2 identical brown vested suits, and they pulled out their little gold badges and slapped them against the window. They had me all chained up inside this room with a, you know, Burger King thing that you're talking to. And I said, you know, right out loud, I said, you know what? I said, if this is about cooperation, I said, you just open that door up and, you know, send me home or send me back to my cell because it ain't happening. Susan Daltuva, who was the United States prosecutor who was prosecuting me at that time, she was in the next room. She heard me say that. She comes running into the room and she goes, "No, Timmy," she says, "you know, cooperation isn't really what we're looking for because we know that's not possible for you." She said, "But what we would like to know is how you guys were able to do this for nearly a decade and we couldn't catch you." And I said, "Well, game over. I can tell you that. I'll tell you how stupid you fuckers are," right? So that's when I started telling them about driving this shit out of town and waving at you probably half the time we're going out of town. And how do you think we got all that stuff to Miami, man? It was like going on like this, and you had no clue, you know. And so I start, you know, then these investigators from the U.S. Attorney's Office want to come and talk to me. So almost every other day I'm getting shackled and cuffed, and I'm taken outside the jail. I'm here downtown Fort Myers, and I'm doing the convict shuffle with all these chains and shit on into the next building, right? And I start telling them, you know, how stupid they are, how we do this, how we do that, you know, this, no names, but, you know, you figure it out if you can fucking figure it out, okay? I had, one of the guys on the crew was Everglades National Park Ranger. He was one of my best friends. He was on my crew. He introduced me to a guy in Miami who was a counter surveillance technology expert. He worked with the government on their surveillance technology. I was getting the same, if not better, technology that the government was getting. I had handheld radar. At that time, they were perfecting Starlight Scope, night vision from the Vietnam War. You know, I had 3 of those.
Really?
Yeah, all kind of cool shit, man.
Wow.
I had a little RF detector. It was about half this size. It was about this big, size of a deck of cards. Little switch on top, a little red light, and a telescopic antenna that I could unscrew off and put a wire antenna on it. I could take that wire, put that thing in my pocket, run the wire down my pant leg, and I'm walking to the club. If this thing starts to vibrate, somebody's recording. It's picking up or sending a signal. Somebody's picking up a radio frequency, RF. It's the radio frequency detector. So if I feel this thing vibrating in my pocket, I just walk around the club till I find out who's carrying it.
Really?
Yeah. And when I get home at night, then I unscrew the wire, put the telescopic antenna back on it, pull it out, and sweep my house when I get home.
That's
just
insane.
The coolest shit, man, you know. And when this is all part of having ramped up our operation once the grown-ups and us kids took over. Yeah. Now, we're all using the kind of boat that I showed you, the T-Craft, that was very popular. Another boat that was very popular, shallow drafting boat, was made by a couple of brothers, Morgan brothers, made boats in Naples. Oh, yeah. You know I'm
familiar with Morgan boats.
The Morgans?
Yeah. I don't know that, but I'm familiar
the Morgan
with the
boats. Yeah, excellent boat. So we changed all over to those. You know, we got rid of the mullet skiffs. You know what those are? Yep. With the little motor in the middle, kind of old-fashioned kind of shit. But they were great at the time because that's all there really was. And everybody was really fond at that time of the 235 Evinrudes, you know, because they're the most dependable and powerful engines at that time as far as torque. There were so many T-Crafts at that time during the late 70s, early 80s, and through the mid-80s. There's so many T-Crafts around Southwest Florida, people had to start hiding them, keeping them out of sight, because, I mean, it takes like 25 or 30 of these to unload a 40-ton job, you know, to get it into shore, and then everybody takes them home and hides them and shit like this. Right. We had, and I told you about the logistics of the older generation and the problems they had with their mechanics and keeping boats running and shit like this. Well, I had one mechanic, Sammy, one mechanic for all these boats. And when you called him, if you had a problem with one of your 235s, no matter where you were, if you're Everglades, Goodland, Marco, Naples, wherever, he doesn't come with a truck and a box of wrenches to wrench on your fucking engine. He brings you a new engine. Because it's always been said that if this fucker left me sitting, I'm not gonna give it a chance to let me fucking sit again. Right. Get it off my fucking boat. Right. Well, people say, you know, people always ask me about, well, what about breaking in new engines? I mean, I can't put a brand new engine on there and haul loads like that around. Well, duh, of course not. We must have known at that time, between all of us, every private charter captain that there was fishing in those days, you know, 6-pack charter captains, we'd give them a 235 Evinrude, just give it to them to use. And then Sammy would make note and keep track of all the engines he's given to all these people. And when they run so many hours on them, he takes them out, swaps them out, gives them a new engine, takes that engine, puts it back in the crate. So when we call him, he brings us an already broken in 235, hangs it on a boat, we're good to go. That's how you sharpen up the fucking that's how you shape up an operation, man.
That's incredible.
Not only that, this is funny fuck. One of the guys on the crew was the son of one of the sheriff deputies in Everglades City. There's only 3. I mean, there's a sheriff and 2 deputies. Right. I mean, guys like Barney Fife and, you know. So when his dad was on duty, you know, it was like the back door was open, man. He usually worked the night shift, you know, it just shit was coming, man. There was one night, I don't know if it was him or whoever it was in the car. I'm unloading at the Everglades National Park Ranger Station. It's right there in the middle of town. Lights on in the parking lot and all kind of shit like that there. And this is in early days. This is way back when. And I'm eliminating all the other people out of the play. I'm eliminating everybody except the mothership. And the 2 boats that I hired to bring it in, the 2 crab boats I hired to bring it in. Typically, they bring it in, and then the little boats grab it, take it to the house. You know the story, blah, 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 like that. Well, I cut everybody out of the picture and brought those 2 boats right to the docks at the Everglades National Ranger Station and loaded that shit in 2 tractor-trailer trucks that were sitting there in the parking lot. Sheriff's car sitting there, lights on in the parking lot, and the guys in the front seat like this. 2 in the morning, sheriff's sleeping, trucks getting loaded, and you know I don't tell that very often because you know
you can't make this shit up, man.
No, and there was I mean it just gets better. There was a guy, 2 Marine Patrol guys in Marathon, and in Marathon they put up a type of a weather balloon. They called it Fat Boy, and it mounted below it was a radar device. So they cranked this thing out there on a cable, I don't know, 400, 500, 600 feet, 1,000 feet in the air. This was a good size, looked like a blimp, a Goodyear blimp, but it was downscaled. Well, they could watch through radar the traffic lanes coming through the Yucatan Pass. We call it the Gap. There's the western coast of Cuba and the eastern coast of the Yucatan. And that's where we had to come through to get to Southwest Florida. Well, they had this goddamn radar up there that's watching. And they turn it on every night. And they put a VHS tape and have it running and recording so they don't have to monitor it. Just in case, and they file it away. In case anything comes under suspect, they can go back and review, you know, whatever. So being that there's 2 guys down there in Marathon, we always went in when we were lobster fishing. We'd always stop and spend the night at a hotel in a really nice resort called the Buccaneer. So one of the guys was single, the other guy was married, had kids, and just like that. Because we had guys following them. I had a couple of guys that live in Marathon watch these guys. Well, the one guy that was single really liked having dinner at the Buccaneer, you know, because it was a cool place to hang out, in a bar and a grill and that kind of thing, and it was on the water and stuff. So. I took one of my dumbass buddies down there. I mean, this guy was, you know, had about as much education as you can get out of a number 2 pencil that's about this big, you know. So I said, look, what you need to do is go in there, and I had a bag of money, I had $100 grand. I said, go in there, sit down next to the guy, put the bag down on the floor next to you, and have to strike up a conversation. And it's real simple, dude. He's either going to grab you, or try to grab you, and in that case, then you run your fucking ass off, grab the bag, but run your ass off, or he's just going to sit there and listen to you talk. So Sammy takes the bag and he goes in. The guy's sitting at the bar, and we can see through the window. We're in the car, and we're watching in there, and he's in there 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I'm thinking, what the fuck is he asking this guy for a date or what? And he gets up and he walks out, gets in the car, and we drive off. Had he tried to grab you, you dive in the window, and we're down the road, and we're in that T-craft of ours, and we're halfway across Florida Bay before he gets his car started. But it turns out he just sat there, kept the money. What we did was asked him to turn that VCR off. Don't turn the radar off. Just turn the VCR off at a certain day, at a certain time, for so many hours. as our boat's coming through the Yucatan. Because when you're coming through the Yucatan and you change from one shipping lane to another, there's shipping lane that goes to Houston, New Orleans, and Tampa for bigger vessels. If anything strays out of those shipping lanes, they become suspect, and they may get looked at, they may not get looked at. It depends. So we have him turn it off for so many hours at that time so he can get out of the shipping lanes and into the crabbing lane where all the crabbers are, or the shrimp boats are. It's simple as that.
Insane.
But if you think about it, in those days, if you offer a cop or you offer a Marine Patrol or any one of these guys, park ranger, 10 times their annual salary just to go over there for 2 hours and go to sleep, and what the fuck do you think they're going to do?
Right.
They're going to go take a nap, for Christ's sake.
Right.
I mean,
don't give a fuck what you're doing.
Nah, in those days, it was just that easy.
That's amazing, man. That's fucking amazing. Well, dude, we just did like 2.5 hours.
Sweet.
I appreciate
it. We just got started, man.
I know. We got to do a part 2 of this, man.
Yeah, when I get my tooth back that the mangroves knocked out the other day. Jesus.
Where can people go buy your book?
Check it out on Amazon. They're selling Amazon, Saltwater Cowboy, Rise and Fall of a Marijuana Empire. I've seen people reselling my book for as much as $150 on Amazon.
Really?
Yeah. Can you believe that shit?
That's wild. Why?
How? I don't know.
They're limited supply?
Well, Amazon buys them, and they're gone.
Okay.
And I believe what's happening is they're pushing the. I'm also on Kindle and a Nook, and I also have an Audible version.
Oh, good. Did you read it, or you had someone read it?
No. I put my hat in the ring.
Yeah.
During pre-production, but it was too late during pre-production because I was having a contract dispute between, not so much a dispute, but rather a change in my contract where St. Martin's Press, who I contracted as my publisher, had written Amazon and Audible into their contract. So they would have gained any resulting residual from those, and I would have not seen it. Okay. So I scratched that shit out of there. Okay. And the minute I did that and turned my contract back in, I get a call. My agent gets a call from Audible saying, "We'd like to advance you and royalty you separately." So I got a deal with Audible. Oh, cool. And I got a deal for the Nook and the Kindle, the ebook versions of it. But those are my most lucrative deals because there's literally no work to be done other than push a button and a download. Where you got to print a book, you got to package it, you got to send it off, and all this kind of shit. There's a lot of money.
Download's much cleaner.
Download's much cleaner and more profitable because I can make up for every 5,000 units sold of my Audible book or my Kindle or Nook books. My percentage of profit increases up to I think 42% of the cost of the book. Oh wow! Which is, that's very lucrative. That's amazing. But
what's the book called?
Saltwater Cowboy, Rise and Fall of a Marijuana Empire, and my picture on the front. Very cool 80s. I got a picture. I'd like to see it. We
have it, don't we? You sent it. Yeah, we got it.
Yeah.
Put it up on there. There we go. There she is. Saltwater Cowboy.
There I am.
Look at you, Tim.
And there's a very cool review. Only 2 reviews on the back of the book. One of them was done by Kirkus. Kirkus is notorious for bashing authors, let alone new authors, but they somehow managed to give me a somewhat glowing review on the back of my book, which I was pretty impressed with.
You have an incredible story,
and
man.
The author of the book Blow, who wrote the guy Bruce Porter, who wrote George Young's story, actually is a St. Martin's Press author as well. So when he found out about the book, he was freaking, man, and wanted to get an advanced copy of it to read it. And he left he said, "Dude, I gotta give this guy a review." He said, "Let me offer a review for the back of the book." And let me see if I can find it here real quick. Oh shit! Why don't I just do this?
Is it on the back of the book?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Oh yeah.
The book. Where am I?
There she is.
Which one am I?
You're here. Hold it close to your face so I can see it. There you
go. Just like that. Saltwater Cowboy, Rise and Fall. Okay, now, these are my 2 reviews. Right here. This is a Kirkus review, and this is Bruce Porter's review.
Talking to the mic so we can hear you.
This is Bruce Porter's review here, and it says, a wild and entertaining true story by one of the biggest pot haulers in American history. Speedboat chases women, Colombian mansions to McBride's Tale of Excess is a thrill to read.
Go buy that book, everybody. Buy it right now.
Get thrilled.
Cool. I'll link it below too. Link it in the description for everyone to see it.
Yeah. You know, and I brought something else. Just real quick, I wanted to show you this.
Yeah.
I have a website too. It's www.originalsaltwatercowboy.com. And there's a media section in there that has a lot of the media that I've done in there and stuff like that. But this is the Life magazine I alluded to earlier. When Operation Everglades 2 came to Everglades in 1984, one of the reporting crews, I said there was so many reporters down there that there were more reporters and cops than there were people being arrested. Life magazine was one of them. They offered up a rather awesome, where did it go, centerfold picture.
Oh, the infamous.
Of the trouble in Everglades. And the subtitle says, a Southwest Florida town tarred with drug smuggling, and most of its 600 residents say, so what? 18 pages of
That's incredible, man.
They put in this magazine, which was pretty outstanding and pretty unprecedented. It made national news all over the country. It was a big deal at that time. And I felt it was necessary to write this book and tell the story about how it actually happened without any embellishment, without any bullshit, regardless of whatever the haters want to throw at me. That's cool, man. I've had it all. If you're going to understand marijuana, particularly in this day and age when it's becoming legalized or quasi-legalized through medical use and what have you, I think that it's important that people understand the true history and judge their first use of this medication, as we call it now, cannabis, for the first time, not by what they see happening and taking place on the Mexican border, the violence and the mayhem and the death and the destruction over cannabis and, you know, all the drugs coming across our border. I don't, particularly the cannabis, I don't want people going into their first experience with cannabis with that in their mind. What they should be thinking about is how it originally took place with my generation and the generation before us. I want you to go into trying cannabis for the first time thinking about that ultra cool Rasta dude standing out in the middle of 200 acres of virgin bud, just, you know, enjoying and digging life, smoking on a spliff, or that little Colombian dude in all his white cotton and his white hat just out there picking and having a good time and just enjoying life like that. No guns, no this and no that. That's the version they should hear. The version they should hear that involves no gunplay, no violence whatsoever, just family-oriented, of course, breaking the law. You know, I'm not advocating, you know, breaking the law or smuggling in any way, shape, or form. It's just what I grew up into. You know, it's just my unfortunate or fortunate circumstance, if you will. But people need to understand that it was not violent. It was never that violent. And the reason being, real quickly, is because if I can spend $300,000 and buy $15 million worth of shit, who's shooting at me? Nobody's shooting at me. They're giving me more money. They can't go back. They can't get me going back there fast enough. So that's how it all took place. So you can find a lot of that on www.originalsaltwatercowboy.com. You can look at some of my posts that I post on Instagram at Original Saltwater Cowboy. And
I got to follow you.
That's it. That's
awesome.
That ain't it. You got to have me back, and we'll talk another 3 hours.
We're definitely going to do another
3 hours.
Hell yeah, man.
Gosh, yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I'm going to follow you right now.
There's this some very interesting characters that involved in this. And keep in mind that we were never violent, dude. I mean, we're kids, man. And I think that has a lot to do with the reason why the United States government chose to do what they did. Yeah. And you know, in retrospect, now I'm 63. I look back on some of the craziness I did, and like I said, I could have cut a cigar with my ass all over. But you know, knowing that we did it in such a way that I'm not ashamed of it. You know, I broke the law. Yeah, I'm an outlaw. I'm a fucking pot hauler, but I never killed anybody. You know. Yeah. Not to say that that didn't happen. It didn't. It went on for sure. I mean, there were assholes out there that just didn't give a shit. You know, I mean, bad dudes. But I don't want that to overshadow, you know, the majority of the shit that was coming into the country and the people that were bringing it.
Right.
Families. You know. So let's leave it at that.
Well, thank you so much, Tim. It's been an invigorating 2.5 hours. So you got a ton of stories.
Went
man.
by like that, dude.
It really did. It really did. I'm super grateful for you coming on, and
thanks for having me.
We'll do it again in the future for sure.
Yeah, I'm just down the road, bro.
Only 2 hours, right?
Yeah, well, that's if somebody doesn't get ass-ended on the
That's
bridge
true.
again.
As long as you don't get ass-ended on the Skyway. Fuck.
Ass-ended on the Skyway, might as well bring a fucking lunch with you.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for listening.